Chapter 9:14. Something had definitely happened in the past 6 months, as everyone seemed to have a plan. A dark haze covered Qin, and Zhao Fu's expression became serious as he felt that something was off. It seemed that they would be able to easily conquer the four kingdoms, but they were now facing massive resistance. Based on the army's current speed, it would take them at least 7 or 8 months to reach the four kingdoms. Would Zhao Fu waste 7 or 8 months of his precious time on these four countries? That was impossible, and Qin had to develop as quickly as possible because the human world did not have much time left. If Zhao Fu could not even unify the human world, it would be impossible to conquer the dark demon world and fish scale world. Roar! A dragon's roar sounded out, and soon, a soldier ran into the tent and knelt on one knee, holding a bamboo tube as he said loudly, "Reporting, Your Majesty. This is a report from the Second Army." Meng Kuo, who was next to Zhao Fu, walked over and brought the bamboo tube to Zhao Fu's side. Zhao Fu took the bamboo tube and opened it, taking out a rolled-up piece of paper. Now that teleportation channels could not be used, they could only rely on the wyverns to send information. With the wyvern's strength, it would be safer for them to send information. The four armies were all led by generals, and Zhao Fu was in charge of the first army. Apart from Meng Kuo, Wang Jian was by his side, Wei Liao was in charge of the second army, Bai Qi was in charge of the third army, and Bai Shihan was in charge of the fourth army. After reading through the contents of the paper, it said that they had encountered a beast tide of millions of beasts. Even though the beast tide was incredibly ferocious, they were still killed by Qin's army, though they had suffered some casualties. The situation was similar to that of Zhao Fu's army. There were constantly people attacking, slowing down the army's advance, and Qin's army was unable to advance quickly. Following this, the other two armies also sent reports, and the situation was similar to that of Zhao Fu's army. Roar! Suddenly, the roars of countless beasts filled the night sky, and Zhao Fu could clearly sense a massive and ferocious aura coming from the northwest toward Qin's army. This should also be a beast wave. As the beast horde approached, it gave off deafening rumbling sounds. The black beast horde carried an unstoppable aura as it rushed toward Qin's army like a flash flood. Facing this beast tide, Qin's city soldiers did not panic at all, as there were only a few million wild beasts. Soon, Qin's city soldiers reacted and formed into formations, while the city lords prepared to act and destroy this beast tide. Zhao Fu let out a cold harumph, his heart burning with rage. He left the tent and transformed into a beam of light, appearing above the beast tide in less than a moment. Looking at the ferocious beast tide, Zhao Fu directly exploded out with his full power. A powerful aura flowed out as Zhao Fu took out the Death Disaster Sword and slashed out with a terrifying sword light. Boom! A massive explosion sounded out as the massive sword light seemed to split the ground in two, causing the ground to continuously tremble. A 10,000-meter long and 100-meter wide sword gash appeared on the ground, and blood spurted everywhere, as well as dismembered corpses. This sword strike could be said to have taken the lives of hundreds of thousands of wild beasts, and the terrifying aura caused the entire beast tide to pause. Most of them were just ordinary wild beasts, so how could they stop Zhao Fu, who had exploded out with his great King Seal's power? After slashing out with that terrifying sword strike, Zhao Fu rushed into the beast tide and started a massacre. Sword light continuously shot out, and blood and dismembered corpses continuously flew everywhere. Before the ferocious beast tide could reach Qin's army, they were either killed or ran away in fear. Of course, Qin's other city lords also helped out. How could they just stand there and watch as their majesty killed the beast by himself? However, they could sense Zhao Fu's fury, so they acted cautiously and cautiously slaughtered the wild beasts. After killing countless wild beasts, Zhao Fu felt much better and was no longer as depressed. Unknowingly, the benevolent heart's eye no longer gave him intense pain, and it had most likely turned into the killing heart's eye. Now that they had encountered such a massive resistance, Zhao Fu returned to his tent and discussed with the other generals. They decided to give up on advancing, and they mobilized most of Qin's scholars to destroy this disgusting isolation barrier. If they continued to advance, Zhao Fu did not want to spend 7 or 8 months marching like this. As such, he could only choose to destroy the isolation barrier before continuing. They rested here for a few days and waited for Scholar Qin's army to arrive. Now that Qin's army was stationed here, no one came to attack them. Just the archers on the outskirts could easily kill them, so they did not dare to come close. After Scholar Qin arrived, he brought many things with him, mainly things to test and destroy isolation barriers. Following this, they started to destroy isolation barriers. Because Zhao Fu had mobilized many scholars, he gave them the task of destroying countless isolation barriers within a month. Zhao Fu had to destroy the 4 kingdoms within a month, then turn around and attack other places. Because the scholars had to search for isolation barriers, Zhao Fu sent many city lords to ensure their safety. Otherwise, a few teams of players would be able to destroy Scholar Qin's army, as they were not very strong. Zhao Fu also waited for the results. These 4 kingdoms had resisted so much, and after conquering them, he would properly deal with them. A few days later, Zhao Fu looked quite displeased as he looked at the scholars kneeling in front of him. Over the past few days, there had been no progress in destroying isolation barriers, and they had wasted a few more days, making Zhao Fu quite angry. According to the scholars, this isolation barrier was formed from countless isolation barriers, forming a large isolation barrier. Even though they had destroyed some isolation barriers, new isolation barriers had been formed. In other words, no matter how many isolation barriers Qin destroyed, the other side would be able to reconstruct. Moreover, within this isolation barrier, they had left a path, which meant that they could use teleportation channels, while Qin could not. In terms of speed, Qin was far behind them, so he did not have the initiative and was at a disadvantage. Zhao Fu was worried that the other side city lords would suddenly attack one of the armies. After all, Qin's 10,000 or so city lords could split into 4 paths. Each path only had 2,000 or so city lords, while the other side had 5,000 or so city lords. Fortunately, Qin had not gone too deep, so the various city lords could arrive in time. However, once they went too deep into the isolation barrier and split up, Qin would be in danger. Zhao Fu breathed out and calmed himself down. He now understood the situation Qin was in, and he gave the order, the 4 armies are to return and give up on attacking the 4 kingdoms. Chapter 9:15. After returning to Qin's court, Zhao Fu looked at the officials and said, "I'm sure you've all sensed that this isn't simple and that it was a premeditated scheme. Now that Qin is at a disadvantage in all aspects, we can't act rashly. What do you all think about this?" Hearing this, Wei Liao stepped out and bowed as he said, "Your Majesty." This time, Qin's intelligence network is somewhat lacking, and they didn't detect such a scheme. If they had detected it, Qin would have been able to think of a way to deal with it. I suggest that we use Flower Moon. Before, most of the important information was obtained from them. Right now, Qin's intelligence network has only been established in the past 2 years, and it isn't very mature. It can't compare to Flower Moon's people. Zhao Fu thought to himself. Great Qin's independent intelligence network had been established after all of the regions had been opened up. If the regions had not been opened up, Great Qin's people would not have been able to go anywhere in the world, and it would have taken about 2 years. Flower Moon had appeared at almost the same time as the ancient clans, and it had been doing business and intelligence for thousands of years. Its roots were unimaginably deep, and ordinary people couldn't detect it at all. As such, it could obtain a lot of important information, and Qin's intelligence network couldn't compare to it. Even though all of Flower Moon's higher-ups have been captured by Qin, those departments still had their roots, and intelligence was incredibly important at any time. "Send down my order to summon Xiao Yuan," Zhao Fu said without hesitation. Following this, Xiao Yuan came to the palace. Seeing the officials' gazes, Xiao Yuan seemed to have guessed something, and a trace of a smile appeared on her face as she bowed to Zhao Fu and said, "Greetings, Your Majesty." Seeing the smile on Xiao Yuan's face, Zhao Fu knew that she had guessed it. So he said directly, "I promise you that Flower Moon will be restored, and you will still be the owner of Flower Moon. But now Flower Moon must be a member of Qin, and Qin's intelligence agency will be supervised by some people. I will also keep the name of Flower Moon. What do you think?" Xiao Yuan lightly laughed and replied, "This concubine is willing to accept everything. Thank you, Your Majesty, for restoring Flower Moon and preserving its name. This concubine and the people of Flower Moon will not disappoint Your Majesty." Zhao Fu nodded and made Xiao Yuan a rank 2 official, making her a member of Great Qin. Following this, Flower Moon once again started to function, and its various organizations started to work. Even the Heaven Awakened World Forum was once again restored. A few days later, Huayu accurately investigated a piece of information, which was information that Qin was not able to obtain. All the doubts were also explained according to the recent events. Firstly, it was not just the factions in the Midland continent, but also the factions in the other continents that stood together against Qin. Qin swept across the world, and the factions could not just wait for death. They would definitely resist, and the other continents did not want to see Qin unify the Midland continent either. After all, if the Midland continent was unified, the other 4 continents would be in danger. However, considering how powerful Qin was, taking the initiative to attack would result in great losses. Last time had been a good lesson, so they decided not to take the initiative to attack and instead chose to defend. In other words, they would defend against Qin's attacks. The factions closest to Qin put in the most effort. Because of the crisis, the factions further away put in more effort, while the factions from the other continents only helped out from the side. Last time, they had not acted rashly because the 4 countries had already set up 10,000 city lords and all sorts of traps. If Qin had acted rashly, they would have fallen into their trap and suffered heavy losses. At the same time, there were armies prepared in the other 3 directions. When Qin entered the Void Zone and was unable to escape, they would ferociously attack. Such a detailed and massive plan was not something that a single person could pull off. It required an incredibly meticulous plan, and it relied on a single faction. This faction had only appeared recently, and it only had one goal: to deal with Qin. This faction was called the Qin faction, and it was made up of strategists from the various dynasties, such as Jiangxia, Xiaohe, and Lu Bowen. There were also strategists from the various legatees, and the most famous ones were the Shu kingdom's Zhuge Liang, the Wu kingdom's Zhou Yu, and the Wei kingdom's Guojia. There were also 2 other famous people from the school of vertical and horizontal. One was from a vertical branch, and he was Su Yin, who had disappeared for a long time. He had contributed greatly to the appearance of the Qin faction, and the other was Zhang Heng from the horizontal branch. This was the first time that the school of vertical and horizontal had joined forces to deal with a single faction. It could be said that they were unrivaled under the heavens. Zhao Fu had always wanted to kill Su Yin, but after that great battle, he seemed to have disappeared into thin air, and he could not be found no matter how hard he tried. Now, he had suddenly reappeared and continued on the path of opposing Qin. There was also Zhang Heng. Zhao Fu had met him once before, and he had felt that he was an incredibly dangerous person. He had helped Qin a bit before, and when they were fighting for Battle City, he had given Zhao Fu some plans. Back then, Zhao Fu had wanted to make him stay and work for Qin, but it was a pity that Zhang Heng did not have such thoughts. Zhao Fu had never thought that he would choose to stand on the side of opposing Qin. The main reason was that he had already chosen a master, and he had chosen to be loyal to one of the kingdoms that Qin had destroyed, the Yin kingdom. Under Qin's might, no one had been able to stop him, and they could only choose to ally with him. All of the plans had come from this faction, and they had used them as strategists against Qin. The other factions only had to help out a bit, so they were more at ease. After all, plotting against Qin had gathered countless genius-level strategists, so they were naturally at ease. With their existences and the various plans that they had set up, Qin could not afford to be careless, nor did he dare to act recklessly. It could be seen just how great a threat they were. Another question that Zhao Fu had was answered which was that players were not afraid of reality-harming talismans, as they had an item that made them immune to reality-harming talismans. This item was called a two-body talisman, and it separated one's consciousness from one's body, protecting the body in the real world. Injuries suffered in the Heaven-Awakened world could not be brought back to the real world, so this nullified the effects of reality-harming talismans. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin was so powerful, with this talisman, Qin would once again be surrounded and attacked by countless players. As long as one had money, they would not die a true death, and many people would do such things. The person who had provided these talismans was naturally Su Yin. He had disappeared for a long time, and it was not as if he had not gained anything. It was said that he had entered a historical remnant and obtained massive benefits. Chapter 9:16. In addition, this kind of talisman could only be immune to primary true damage, while Zhao Fu's Killing Heart Sword could directly destroy the soul, so this kind of talisman couldn't work. As long as someone was killed by Zhao Fu's Killing Heart Sword, he would still die. Facing the big picture that they had set around Qin, Zhao Fu couldn't do it alone, so he could only discuss it with the generals. If they couldn't attack the 4 countries now, they could choose to turn around and attack from 3 other directions. One was to swallow the remaining 2 areas in the north of Huaxia, and then develop to the east and west, isolating the 4 countries. Then it would be easier to deal with them, because with the power of Qin's country, no one could easily travel between the 4 countries. Then they would be isolated, and it would be easier to deal with them. The second option was to directly enter the central area, which was the center of Huaxia, and control 1,000 areas. Then they would attack the east, west, and west, and unify Huaxia first. Because other small countries didn't put much pressure on Qin, they could be easily cleaned up. But every time, it was the internal forces of Huaxia that put the most pressure on Qin. Everything was related to them, and they were the biggest obstacle to Qin. As long as they got rid of this biggest obstacle, Qin's future would be naturally easy. The remaining forces in Huaxia wouldn't have the ability to fight against Qin. This was actually a good way to get rid of the internal resistance forces and then deal with the external forces. But the other side had already expected that Qin would attack them. When Zhao Fu and his generals were ready to turn around and enter the central plains, a 5-area isolation zone had already been set up. It could be said that the central area was the place where the luck of Huaxia was the most concentrated, and the orthodox royal family of Huaxia, namely the Xia dynasty, was here. Although Qin's sudden rise made the whole luck of Huaxia lean to the north, there were many big forces in the central area, such as the family, the Taoist, the Confucian, and the Mahis. Even though most factions remained neutral on this matter, some factions chose to help others resist Great Qin. For example, the Confucian school, which couldn't stand Qin Han's atrocities, and the Mahis school, which was based on benevolence and virtue, were also the main members of the anti-Qin Qin. When Qin took over the central plains, these forces would have to make a choice. Because if Qin took over the central plains, there would be no other forces in the central plains. In other words, all the forces in the central plains would be wiped out. They could choose to surrender or die. There was no neutral option. This undoubtedly made it more difficult for Qin to take over the central plains. Now, Qin felt that there was a lot of resistance wherever he attacked, as if he was surrounded by them. How could he break out of this situation now? On the other side, in a tall and luxurious pavilion, everyone was celebrating. With Qin's current strength and his unstoppable aura, there were very few people who could block that sharp edge. But today, everyone had done it. This could be said to be a great victory, and Qin had voluntarily retreated. It was a pity that Qin had retreated in time. If he had gone deeper, their other plans would have been effective, and they would have been able to deal a heavy blow to Qin. Apart from the strategists at the banquet, there were also the legatees. The legatees of the dynasty legatees who had disappeared before also had smiles on their faces as they sat together, drinking and chatting merrily. Come, Brother Su, I propose a toast to you. This time, you've contributed the most. CG was a bit drunk, and he held a wine cup as he affectionately hugged Su Yin, as if they were blood brothers. Su Yin lightly smiled as he picked up the wine cup on the table and drank it in one gulp as he said, "This is not just my contribution. My junior apprentice brother and the strategist all contributed, so the credit belongs to everyone. Also, Qin won't give up on his expansion plan so easily, so we have to continue to be careful." Hearing this, and thinking about how terrifying Great Qin was, everyone who was slightly tipsy became more clear-headed and nodded seriously. Back to Qin, Zhao Fu and the generals had already discussed the countermeasures, and they planned to attack the four countries. After all, the resistance to entering the Central Plains was much greater than destroying the four countries. Only when Qin had a stronger force would it be much easier to enter the Central Plains. At the same time, if they cleared out the north first, there would be nothing to worry about. However, if they wanted to enter the Central Plains, they would have to face not only the various Chinese forces, but also the four countries, which was quite difficult to deal with. As such, Zhao Fu decided to attack the four countries first. Although there were isolation zones everywhere in Qin, there was one place that didn't have isolation zones, which was the northern coast of Qin. This was Qin's sea, so they naturally couldn't set up isolation zones, so there was no resistance here. Qin could go to the rear of the four countries through the sea, so they could attack from behind. However, it was also possible that the four countries would also set up isolation zones in the coastal areas to prevent Qin from attacking them by sea. However, even if they set up isolation zones, Zhao Fu still decided to attack by sea, because he had already thought of a countermeasure. First of all, he would take out 100 million of the 400 million regular soldiers, and then use the 100 million militias that had cleared out the areas before to make up for the gap. This time, he would attack the four countries from the front. This way, the number of troops wouldn't change, so it wouldn't arouse too much suspicion. The four countries would definitely think that Qin would continue to attack from the front, so they would also concentrate their forces on the front. At the same time, when the four armies advanced, they would also set isolation zones. Even if Qin couldn't use the transmission formation, they would force them to be unable to use it step by step. In this way, Qin wouldn't be at a disadvantage, and he would have the ability to fight with them. As for the 100 million soldiers, Zhao Fu would take them to the rear of the four countries by sea and attack them. Even though there were isolation zones, because of Qin's army in the northern coast, it would naturally be controlled, and the 8 aquatic beast kings would be put to use. When the time came, because the four countries' forces and city lords would all be gathered at the front, Zhao Fu would take some city lords and the 8 aquatic beast kings to fly across the void zones and ferociously attack them from behind. Traveling by boat was much faster than walking. The journey that would normally take 1 month would take 15 days by boat, which meant that Zhao Fu would need 15 days. Going to the rear of the four countries by sea saved them a lot of time. The only thing that Zhao Fu had to pay attention to was that there might be countless players counterattacking. After all, they weren't afraid of Qin at all, as true damage was useless against them. Moreover, Qin was directly invading them, so it definitely wouldn't be as easy as invading Vietnam. Chapter 9:17. Moreover, he only had 100 million soldiers, and most of Qin's city lords would be at the front lines to attract the attention of the four countries. It would be quite difficult to invade four countries at the same time, so Zhao Fu decided to invade one country first. After destroying one country, he would immediately move on to another country. He would first destroy Myanmar and Thailand, because they were more powerful than the other countries. On the other side were Laos and Cambodia, which were relatively weaker. After Qin destroyed Myanmar and Thailand, it would be much easier for him to deal with them. Moreover, Qin had planted a large chess piece in Laos, which was the Vietnamese faction. Almost 70% of the factions had secretly joined Qin, and Zhao Fu could order them to attack Laos at any time, making it much easier for them to deal with Laos. In the end, only Cambodia was left, and there was no hope for them. There was only one outcome, which was destruction. After spending another month or so, Qin built a large number of ships for Qin's 100 million soldiers to travel to the four countries. Before, Qin didn't have enough ships to carry 100 million soldiers, so he had to quickly build them. Now that everything was ready, Bai Qi, Wang Jian, Wei Liao, and by Shihan, led the four armies to attack the four countries. This caused the Midland continent, which had been peaceful for the past 10 or so days, to once again become chaotic. The four countries and the Chinese factions once again became spirited and prepared to deal with Qin's attacks. The situation was still the same as before, and the four armies continued to advance. However, they were constantly ambushed, making their advance incredibly slow. This time, Qin's army brought scholars and set up isolation barriers wherever they went. This way, the four countries' people wouldn't be able to attack Qin at any time. Their attacks would also become more difficult, and they wouldn't be as nimble as before. Qin's situation was gradually changing, and the four countries' people's expressions were not as good as before. As they continued to attack, they reported the situation to the higher-ups and told them to think of a way to resolve this. Regarding this, the four countries were also discussing how to deal with it. Some of them even directly asked the Chinese side for advice. The Chinese side also responded enthusiastically, as if they were two relatives. Now, it was as if they were one big family. Of course, this harmonious and intimate scene was only because of Great Qin. It was only because of Great Qin's threat that they could be so intimate and harmonious. In a world where benefits were the most important, there were no morals, good or evil. There were many cases of people killing their brothers, fathers, wives, and children for power. Zhao Fu had already forgotten about the 21 countries invading China, and some people had said that China was one of them. If others wanted to attack and bully China, Great Qin should have helped China. However, things had turned out like this. As such, Zhao Fu wanted to replace China and make sure that only Great Qin existed in the world. Their way of dealing with this was to first teleport more people and split up their forces, waiting for Great Qin to arrive. That way, they could simultaneously launch attacks and achieve the same effect. Even though they would not be as flexible as before, the more they did this, the better the effects would be. Because the body transformation formation was something that Zhao Fu was going to use at the back of the four countries, he could not reveal it beforehand. As such, the four Qin armies did not use the body transformation formation. Facing the attacks of the four countries, Great Qin was incredibly steady and slowly advanced, looking as if it was going to attack the four countries. This gave the four countries a big fright, and they sent even more people to attack, looking as if they would defend even if it cost them their lives. On the other side, Zhao Fu led 100 million soldiers on countless ships, as well as the 8 aquatic beast kings and 2,000 city lords. With this kind of strength, destroying a country would not be a problem, but the 8 aquatic beast kings and Zhao Fu's strength were quite terrifying. The other 100 million soldiers and 2,000 city lords were mainly used to control the residents and soldiers, and they were just helping. Countless ships sailed on the ocean, creating a majestic scene. It could be said that this was the human world's largest fleet. After sailing for 5 or 6 days, they were much faster than they had expected. They were now more than halfway through the journey, and nothing unexpected had happened. Zhao Fu stood on the ship at the very front, preparing for anything unexpected. He had thought that they would reach the coast of the four countries like this, but a shocking shockwave suddenly exploded out, causing the heavens to tremble. The surface of the ocean started to change, continuously roiling and crashing, and waves started to rise, causing the surface of the ocean to become quite unstable. Immediately, Zhao Fu felt a terrifying sense of danger, and his expression fell. He immediately sent out the 8 aquatic beast kings, and 20,000 or so people appeared in the distance, all of them giving off powerful auras. They were all city lords. Su Yan, who was in the lead, gave a trace of a mocking smile as he looked at Zhao Fu and said, "Long time no see, Emperor Qin. I have to thank you first. It was you who made me realize how weak and useless I was before. However, things are different now because we've seen through all of your plans. Hurry and retreat." Zhao Fu did not have time to pay attention to Su Yan, but when that terrifying shockwave had appeared, Zhao Fu had felt that something was off. Now that he had personally seen the 20,000 city lords, He understood that this was a trap that had been waiting for him, so he immediately gave the order to retreat. All of the ships obeyed and quickly retreated, but it was already too late. Ahead, a 1,000-meter tall and 10,000-kilometer-long wave formed, giving off a terrifying aura that seemed to be able to devour everything as it rushed towards Qin's fleet. Ark! Zhao Fu furiously roared as he took out the Sin Dragon Sword and exploded out with the 6 paths of reincarnation demon image's power, sending it into the Sin Dragon Sword. The Sin Dragon Sword gave off a world-destroying sword light, and Zhao Fu's sword gave off an incredibly terrifying aura as it slashed towards the massive wave. Boom! 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 The 8 aquatic beast kings obeyed Zhao Fu's orders and exploded out with terrifying auras, forming 8 massive mountains. Because they were aquatic creatures, they immediately entered the ocean and smashed towards the wave. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded out as the terrifying sword light split the massive wave in half. The 8 aquatic beast kings gave off mountain-like auras as they slammed into the wave, causing it to collapse. However, the massive amount of seawater continued to rush towards Qin's fleet. Ships were easily destroyed, and countless soldiers fell into the water. Even though Qin had prepared for this and had given all of the soldiers water pearls so that they could breathe underwater, the power of the wave's collapse was like tens of thousands of kilograms of force that slammed into the soldiers' bodies. The soldiers were all heavily injured, and their organs ruptured. They coughed up blood and died, and corpses floated on the surface of the ocean. Following this, another 1,000-meter-tall wave ferociously rushed over. Zhao Fu exploded out with all of his strength, and the 8 aquatic beast kings and city lords also attacked with all of their strength, wanting to stop this destructive wave. Chapter 9:18. This was the first time they had achieved such a result, causing the other forces to go wild with joy. This was because they had never obtained such a big victory before. The main reason was that there were simply too many people with special abilities, and they had all gathered together to plan a trap. This was not something that ordinary people could break. This sort of result was within reason. From the very beginning, they had closely calculated Qin's actions, and no matter what methods they used, they had thought of all of them and had come up with countermeasures. This was the greatest use of strategists. The various factions were quite cooperative. Firstly, they had done a good job in gathering information, and most of the higher-ups did not know about this. They had only suddenly received orders and immediately set off. This prevented Qin from finding out anything, and Qin would not have been able to make any preparations, so he would naturally lose. Secondly, the various factions had worked together. Even though the amount of effort they put in was different, they could at least use a bit of it. After obtaining victory, the leaders of the various factions gathered together and started to celebrate. Because everyone was worried that Qin would suddenly take revenge, they did not drink too much, but it was still quite lively. CG stood up and shouted, "Now, everyone knows that Qin is not invincible. As long as we can work together, there is no need to fear Qin at all." Liu Yi smiled as he stood up and cupped his hands towards CG as he said, "Brother G is right. If more people joined us and we could work together, we would have long since destroyed Qin and would not have allowed Qin to act so arrogantly." Hearing this, everyone nodded, but they all had their own thoughts. Ji Shanming sighed. "It's mainly because we were too arrogant and disdained to deal with Qin from the start. Now, we've allowed him to slowly develop. If we had put down our arrogance and worked together, Qin would have long since been destroyed and would not have been able to develop at all. This is such a pity." Also, Di Wutian was too arrogant and was not willing to admit defeat. In the end, he also died there. I heard that not only did all of his women serve Qin's prince, but even his family's beautiful women were captured. This outcome is quite tragic, and I don't dare to look at it directly. Humph! Qin is so cruel and heartless. But that Imperial Prince Qin is not only cruel, but he also does such licentious things. He is truly a tyrant and a thief. The world should have long since attacked him and gotten rid of this tyrant to uphold justice for the world. A scholar coldly harumphed and said, Everyone agreed with this because this was the truth. Prince Qin was a cruel and lecherous person, but such a person had been chosen by China's fate. Moreover, his faction had developed so quickly, and his strength had caused countless people to feel fear. These people were forced to join forces to resist. Why didn't they have such good luck? They didn't have such good opportunities. The heavenly Tao was truly unfair. The wicked were in charge, and the living were in misery. At that moment, there were even people who cried out in sorrow. The heavens must have scared your dog eyes to actually help such an evil person harm the world. Why didn't they give him a chance? However, it seemed like Qin was about to unify the world, but he had still been stopped by them. Being able to win this time was a great vindication, and everyone looked incredibly delighted. Come, let's all celebrate. When we go back, we'll act according to the plan. This time, we must heavily injure Qin so that he can never rise again, CG said loudly as he held a cup of wine. Everyone else agreed, and the scene became quite lively. This news was quickly spread by the large factions, mainly showing how brave and righteous the factions were. If they were righteous and just, and how cruel and stupid Qin's side was, in the end, it was a matter of a hero defeating evil. On one hand, they wanted to vent their anger and let the world know that they had won this time. This would satisfy their vanity, as this was not something that ordinary people could do. On the other hand, they wanted to attract more people to join. Even though the factions seemed quite united, they were still like a plate of loose sand. If they encountered great danger, they would immediately collapse. If they wanted to maintain this, they could only continue to pull more people in. With enough strength, they would not have to worry about the alliance collapsing because of danger. The other factions all had different thoughts about this. The factions that were the most worried were the factions at the center. Now that Qin had suffered a loss, with Qin's savage nature, he would definitely take revenge, and the factions at the center would be the first to bear the brunt. The school of Taoism, the school of legalism, and the school of medicine were also quite worried. Even though they had not participated, it was possible that Qin would go berserk and drag everyone in to take revenge. If that happened, they would be quite innocent. The neutral factions were quite worried, but they could not do anything. If they did anything now, it would cause a misunderstanding. However, most people from the school of Confucianism and the school of Moism were quite happy. After all, Qin's actions deserved to be punished by the heavens. These two factions were mainly benevolent, so even though they knew that going against Qin was quite dangerous, they still chose to resist. Most of the ordinary people were the happiest. They finally did not have to worry about Qin's threat anymore. Su Yin had selflessly revealed the method to create the two-body talisman, saying that it was so that the people of the world would no longer be threatened by tyrannical Qin. Now that there were no more threats, the people who had been suppressing themselves could not help but start a clamor again, making them feel quite disgusted. However, Qin's brutal and barbaric way of doing things made it easy for people to hate him. However, these people were just a bunch of lowly bugs that could be trampled to death at any time. Apart from clamoring, they did not do anything else. If Qin could threaten them, they would not dare to make a sound and would only fear Qin. They were just that lowly and cowardly. Back at Qin, Zhao Fu's expression was quite gloomy. Even though they had given it their all, so many people had died. In actuality, if it was not for the fact that there were so many soldiers, Zhao Fu really wanted to take the 8 aquatic beast kings and charge into the city lords and start a massacre. The real Qin had been on the verge of unifying the world, but he had still been forced to stop. Facing their actions, Zhao Fu felt quite angry. He gathered all of the generals and had to have a proper discussion. At the same time, he had to carefully calculate their plans and what they should do next. Most importantly, he had to think from their perspective, and Qin did not lack generals. Chapter 919. Just 3 days later, Qin sent out news that gave countless factions 3 choices. The first was to continue to resist Qin, which would result in death. Everyone had to think about the consequences of being an enemy of Qin in the past. The second option was to remain neutral. Qin only had one goal, which was to destroy all of Qin's enemies. If he chose to remain neutral, Qin could guarantee that he wouldn't harm you at all. Qin's prime minister, Li Si, could testify to this. Think about it. How long had it been since Qin had attacked a Chinese system faction? Everything had been done by others, so you had to become enemies with Qin. You had to believe that Qin was a just and kind kingdom, and don't listen to rumors spread by others. The third option was to welcome everyone to join Qin. Qin was now a level 1 marquisate kingdom, and it was incredibly powerful. It wasn't something that ordinary people could deal with. If you wanted to live a stable life in the future, Qin was undoubtedly the best choice. Qin was in need of people, and anyone who surrendered would be made an official. The main goal was to divide the other side's factions. They weren't like Qin, who only had one faction. Instead, they were made up of countless factions, including players and indigenous residents. What's more, the indigenous residents were the majority. It was impossible for them to be united, and it was impossible for them to resist Qin wholeheartedly. The dynasties and kingdoms were all emperors, so they would definitely stand against Zhao Fu. However, most people weren't like this. After hearing Qin's words, many people started to consider the three options that Qin had given them, wondering which one was the most suitable. Of course, they weren't stupid, and they didn't want to die. As such, they wanted to remain neutral and not participate. As long as they were safe, that would be enough. Some people wanted to join Qin, as Qin's advantages were self-evident. The people who were plotting against Qin immediately realized Qin's goal, and they couldn't help but look at Zhao Fu in a higher light. They held back their anger and didn't directly rush over. Instead, they started to use psychological tactics. He immediately spread the word about the severity of this matter. Right now, the alliance's momentum had clearly weakened. If they did not deal with this properly, it would only be a matter of time before they collapsed. The faction that wanted to destroy Qin was naturally quite anxious and panicked. They went around trying to persuade the people and said, "Everyone, don't believe Qin's lies and don't worry about Qin's threat. Right now, Qin is just a paper tiger. As long as we exist, you don't have to be afraid. Besides, we all know how cruel and cold-blooded Qin is. Do you still want to believe in such a force? The result must be tragic. Qin's ambition is so obvious that we must see it clearly. Don't be fooled by Qin's people." Many righteous and awe-inspiring words caused the gradually declining momentum to slowly rise again. Once again, Qin and the other forces engaged in a war of words. Each side occupied one side, and most of the people swayed back and forth like grass on the wall. At this moment, Zhao Fu also started his revenge. Even though the barrier they had set up was 5 regions wide and could stop Zhao Fu's army, it could not stop Zhao Fu alone. First of all, Qin's incredible speed was incredibly fast. Now that Zhao Fu had used Qin's royal seal, he had flown across 5 regions in 3 days and arrived at the other side's forces. Because this was the enemy's territory, Zhao Fu was very careful. Apart from himself, he had also brought 8 aquatic beast kings as trump cards. They were currently in Zhao Fu's special spirit pet ring and could be released at critical moments to intimidate everyone. However, in order to prevent them from guessing that Zhao Fu had come to their territory and avoiding any traps they might set up, Zhao Fu would not directly take action and would instead leave it to others. It was currently the afternoon, and the orange sunset dyed the sky yellow. The residents living in the cities were preparing to cook to reward their families who had worked hard for a day. However, a ghost stealthily snuck into the cities and threw down a rhombus-shaped crystal before disappearing. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded out as a destructive explosion sounded out. The terrifying explosive power instantly spread out, causing everything to collapse and turn into dust. The ground continuously trembled as a wild gale swept through the entire cities. After everything calmed down, a massive hole had appeared at the center of the city. 2/3 of the city had been destroyed, and there were cries and cries everywhere. There were blood and corpses everywhere, and the city had been destroyed. Boom! Another shocking explosion sounded out as the same explosion happened in another cities. The ground continuously trembled as a mushroom cloud rose up, creating an incredibly terrifying scene. Today, Zhao Fu had used 120 destruction crystals to destroy 120 cities. These cities were in the three directions of Great Qin, and they were all stubborn resistors. As such, he did not destroy them at all. Instead, he used 120 destruction crystals to destroy 120 cities. This immediately caused massive panic, and 120 cities were almost destroyed. Countless residents died, and Qin's revenge had come. The various factions' expressions were quite unsightly. They had already set up a trap and had been waiting for Qin's legatee to arrive, but they had never thought that Qin's legatee would be so careful and attack so many cities at the same time. Moreover, he did not reveal himself, making them feel quite helpless. In terms of top-tier battle power, none of them could contend against him. The only thing they could do was surround and suppress him, but if he did not reveal himself, all of their plans would be useless. This was the greatest advantage that top-tier forces had, as well as the advantage that Great Qin had. The other factions did not have such an advantage, so they could only watch and not do anything. They were at a disadvantage, and a sense of helplessness rose up in their hearts. A trace of coldness flashed in CG's eyes as he called out, "Have the people from the fish-scale world not returned yet? Also, have you contacted the people from the Dark Demon world? It's best to quickly invite 2 world protectors over. We have a big advantage, and it's the best advantage to kill Qin's legatee. With 2 of them, Qin definitely won't be able to escape." Yes. A few people obeyed and quickly left to check on CG's orders. They understood that the situation was quite urgent. Following this, Qin's army once again gathered and attacked the central region. They did not split into teams and instead gathered together, giving off an unstoppable aura as they swept through everything. This caused the various factions to feel even more panicked. Now, they had suffered 2 heavy losses, and they had not even resolved the matter of Qin's legatee yet. This caused the various system city lords' morale to plummet, and they were already thinking about giving up. Now, they had to face an all-out attack from Qin. Chapter 920. After completing this operation, Zhao Fu had killed at least 20 million people. He did not dare to stay here for too long, and he immediately returned to Qin's side to prevent anything unexpected from happening. This time, almost all of Qin's forces had moved out. Not only did he have 20 core and 8,000 city lords, but he also had 2,000 wyverns and 2,000 corpse soul commanders. They gave off the aura of massive monsters as they rushed towards the central region. Facing Qin's ambush, none of the factions dared to be careless. Their expressions were incredibly serious as they started to gather a large number of soldiers. Groups of players prepared themselves and came out from the teleportation channels that they had secretly set up, charging at Great Qin's army. They continuously harassed Great Qin's army and slowed it down, but soon their plan failed and was completely ineffective. This was because the wyverns circled in the sky above Qin's army. As soon as players appeared in the distance, they would immediately fly over and spit out searing flames and bone-chilling blasts. These players were unable to defend at all and could only be slaughtered by the wyverns. Moreover, behind the countless wyverns, there were countless city lords on standby. If anything unexpected happened, they would immediately act. Before the players who planned to attack could reach Qin's army, they were all slaughtered by the wyverns. They were burned or frozen to death, and their fates were quite pitiful. This caused the various faction strategists to become serious. It seemed that Qin had thought of a way to deal with this, which was why they had sent out their entire army. They had to be careful because Qin had already made preparations. If they were not careful, their central region would be broken through. Since this method did not work, the strategists started to formulate another plan. They gave out orders, and the leaders of the various factions started to feel nervous as they waited for the outcome. After all, they mainly relied on these strategists, and they did not have the ability to help at all. As such, they could only watch. In front of Qin's army, traces of green aura gathered, forming a green fog. This green fog was incredibly dense, and it covered everyone's vision, making it impossible to see what was within the fog. However, this green fog gave off an extremely dangerous aura. As the green fog spread out, countless plants withered, and the ground became charred black. It seemed that this green fog was extremely poisonous, and anyone who breathed it in would be poisoned to death. Sensing this, Bai Qi ordered the army to stop advancing and had people investigate the poison mist. They found that the poison mist was incredibly poisonous, and it could even easily kill Stage 1 soldiers. Bai Qi wondered how the various factions had obtained such a thing. This was all thanks to CG. In order to deal with Great Qin, he had selflessly given this method to others, which was why it had such an effect. He had found a historical remnant before, and this green fog had come from that historical remnant. Moreover, he had also obtained that ancient poison from that historical remnant. Great Qin was definitely not the only one with great opportunities. There were many other people as well. Facing the green fog that gave off an aura of destruction, Bai Qi looked at Wang Jian and Wei Liao and the others who had general armaments. Now, Qin had 13 general armaments, and the last person with a general armament was Wei Qing, who also had the Army Destroyer Star. General armaments had the soldier aura formation, and they could gather more soldier aura than a corps. Each general armament could gather the soldier aura of 30 million soldiers, and now that Qin's army had 400 million soldiers, he could gather the soldier aura of 390 million soldiers. Bai Qi looked at the poisonous fog and drew the 7 murder sword. He coldly harumphed, and a blood-red sword light shot into the sky. A massive aura suddenly descended, and the aura of slaughter spread out like a flood. A blood-red star filled with slaughter, giving off a powerful aura of suppression, slowly broke through the restrictions of the sky and descended into this world. Wang Jian, Wei Liao, and the other generals drew their general armaments and pointed them at the sky. A shocking aura exploded out as massive stars, giving off terrifying power, appeared in the sky. There were 13 of them in total, and they gave off a brilliant light. Soldier aura formation. The generals roared in unison, and all sorts of auras flowed out from Great Qin's massive army and gathered towards the 13 people. This time, they did not form into different shapes, and they instead gathered together with Bai Qi at the center. Boom! The 13 people simultaneously unleashed their general armaments, and the massive soldier aura gave off ferocious power as it rushed forwards like a flood. Soon, the massive soldier aura and the poisonous fog collided. The poisonous fog continuously corroded the soldier aura, while the soldier aura continuously destroyed the poisonous fog. However, in the end, Qin's soldier aura prevailed, and the poisonous fog was reduced to nothingness. Qin's army continued onwards. This caused the various factions' expressions to fall. They had been quite confident in this attack, but they had never thought that Qin's army would be able to destroy it so easily. Moreover, Qin's army had definitely come prepared, and he would not be as careless as before. Soon, the various faction strategists gave the order to activate their second plan. Seeing Qin's army dispel the poisonous fog so easily, CG felt quite shocked and worried, and he yelled, "Why haven't the people from the Fish Scale world and Dark Demon world returned yet? If we miss this opportunity to kill Prince Qin, don't even think about getting another chance in the future." Right now, what CG wanted to do the most was to kill Prince Qin. After all, he was only by himself, while they had countless city lords. Adding on the 2 world protectors, Zhao Fu would definitely die, as the 2 world protectors were enough to heavily injure Prince Qin. With the cooperation of countless city lords and the demon slaying formation, which is an extremely powerful killing formation, no matter how strong Prince Qin was, he would still die in the end. Right now, the most important thing was that CG was worried that Great Qin's legatee would run away. If Great Qin's legatee ran away this time, he would have to think of another way to lure him out. CG inwardly cursed himself for not having that terrifying power. If he had, he would have been able to directly kill Prince Qin, and he would not have to rely on the 2 world protectors. As long as Prince Qin died, The Qin Empire would have nothing to fear. After all, if an empire lost a spiritual figure, it would definitely fall. Even if the Qin legacy land once again chose Qin as its ruler, who in the world could compare to Prince Qin? The Ying family's people could not even compare to a tenth of his own, so CG was not worried about them at all. Rumble. Qin's massive army continued onwards, but a massive explosion sounded out as the ground continuously trembled. The trembling became stronger and stronger, and the ground started to crack. Countless rocks rolled down from the mountains, and mud poured down. Chapter 921. 20 Corps. Hear my orders and spread out around the army. Use the Corps' power to suppress the ground below and stop it from shaking. Soon, Bai Qi gave the order, and the 20 Corps' people gathered around the army and released powerful auras. The Jin Mountain Corps sent countless traces of sword qi into the ground. The Demon King Corps sent countless traces of demonic qi into the ground, and the Celestial Corps sent countless traces of spirit qi into the ground. As the power entered the ground was sealed, and the ground stopped shaking. However, this was only limited to where Qin was standing. The ground around him was still shaking, causing Qin's generals to frown. The various factions had many tricks up their sleeves, and in order to defend well, they had used all sorts of methods. Facing this kind of shaking, Bai Qi ordered his people to wait and not rush out. The shaking continued for 15 days before finally stopping. First of all, the thing that caused the earthquake had been used for 15 days and nights, and it was already damaged. Second of all, the violent tremors in several regions cost tens of millions of gold coins a day, and they couldn't support such a cost. However, those regions looked like they had just been struck by a natural disaster. Mountains had collapsed, and there were massive cracks in the ground. The surroundings were deathly silent, as if all creatures had died. Now, the path was incredibly difficult to walk on, and it was impossible to walk on. However, Bai Qi once again gave the order to attack. Even if there was no path, they would make one. Some of the soldiers took out pieces of yellow jade and used the soil and stones to quickly mend some of the collapsed areas and cracks. The army continued to advance. The various factions had never thought that Qin would attack the central region in such a situation. It seemed that they were determined to destroy the central region, or else they would not give up. The various strategists started to discuss how to deal with this situation. CG's expression was quite grim because he had received news from both worlds that the two world protectors had not fully recovered from their injuries and were still incredibly weak. As such, they would not be able to come and kill Qin's legatee. CG couldn't help but curse inwardly. Now, they could only rely on themselves. They had to think of a way to lure Crown Prince Qin out and use the demon-slaying array to kill him. Since they could only rely on them, this undoubtedly increased the difficulty of the strategists. After a detailed discussion, the strategists decided to order people to repair the earthquake materials. At the same time, Jiang Zia, with the help of everyone, completed a heaven and earth transformation formation. At that moment, Bai Qi led his army and continued onwards, giving off a mountain-like aura. He disregarded all difficulties and looked as if he was determined to attack the central region. The ground once again started to shake, but the magnitude was not as great as before, and they could barely walk. It was not as shaky as before, and they could not even stand properly. This was because some things that had caused the earthquake could not be repaired. Even if they were repaired, they would only be able to achieve this effect. This was somewhat beneficial to Qin's soldiers. If the ground continued to shake like before, Qin would not be able to continue onwards. After all, the roads could collapse at any moment, which was incredibly dangerous. However, the strategists had already thought of a countermeasure, which was Jiang Zia's heaven and earth transformation formation. As this formation activated, the weather in the surroundings suddenly changed, and countless layers of clouds gathered, covering the entire sky. The gloomy sky made people feel quite oppressed. Wild gales blew as torrential rain poured down. Bolts of lightning ferociously blasted down, causing the ground to continuously shake. It looked like a natural disaster, making it incredibly difficult to walk. However, Qin did not give up. The corps raised their core shields to defend against this storm, and Qin's army continued onwards. On a tall stage, there were countless banners around it, and Jiang Zia stood there in his white robes, giving off a celestial aura. There was also a massive magic formation in the sky that slowly spun. Heaven and earth Yuan Qi madly gathered, causing the weather to change. Despite facing Qin's army was still so resolute, looking as if they were determined to break through the central region. Jiang Zia expressionlessly sent out hand seals into the sky, causing the magic formation in the sky to quickly spin, causing even more heaven and earth Yuan Qi to flow in. The weather became even worse, and even more intense gales and torrential rain battered Qin's army. Occasionally, there would even be bolts of lightning, bringing with them terrifying power as they blasted towards Qin's army. Luckily, with the core shields, there were not many casualties. However, it was incredibly difficult to continue onwards. However, Bai Qi's expression was cold, and he did not show any intention of stopping. He ordered the army to continue onwards. Seeing how stubborn Qin was, the various factions could not help but feel quite nervous. If they fought head-on, they were worried that they would not be a match for Qin. After all, Qin's battle strength and battle intent were much higher than theirs. On the other hand, they were a group of people, so they were not as united. Once Qin's army broke through the central region, adding on the threat of Qin's legatee's explosion, many people would immediately run away, and they would definitely lose. If they wanted to salvage the situation, they had to think of a way to stop Qin. The strategists continued to think, and they ordered people to continue to launch death attacks. Because of the terrible weather, whether it was the wyverns or city lords in the sky, they were not safe, so no one was in the sky. If they launched death attacks now, perhaps they would be able to achieve great results. Of course, in order to achieve even greater results, the strategists continued to think of other ways to stop Qin's army in the void zones. That way, they would win. In the end, 6 days later, Qin was unable to defend against so many attacks and difficulties, and they chose to retreat. After defeating Qin once again, the various factions laughed madly, and they felt incredibly excited. This was their second victory, and their low spirits were once again lifted. This showed everyone that they really had the ability to stop Qin. They declared to the world as the victors, "The evil great Qin has been beaten back by us a second time. Now, everyone should believe in our strength and join us to resist great Qin's tyrannical actions and return peace to the human world. We will work towards a better tomorrow." Those who disliked Qin also looked incredibly delighted. This kind of result made them incredibly happy, and they started to cheer and celebrate. Some people even yelled that they would destroy Qin and join the alliance. With such a massive advantage and many benefits, many people did not hesitate to join them. Chapter 922. Su Yin and the other legatees all grinned. This was the second time they had achieved such a victory, and they were incredibly happy. "Everyone, thank you all for stopping Qin. It's all thanks to all of you that we were able to stop Great Qin. Now, there's nothing to fear from Great Qin. We were able to stop Great Qin once, and now that we've done it again, it won't be a problem for us to do it a third time or a fourth time. Now that we've defended enough, please think of how to break through Great Qin. Everyone is thinking for the sake of the common people, so we'll leave everything to you." CG smiled as he spoke confidently. The other legatees also praised the strategists, as they had been the ones who had done all of this. The strategists all had slight smiles on their faces. They were quite calm, and they were able to maintain their calm to deal with any changes. This was the role of a strategist. However, they were quite happy that they had been able to defeat Qin a second time. After all, Qin was simply too powerful and dangerous, and they were under immense pressure. They were worried that they would not be able to deal with Qin. "Shouldn't we celebrate our second victory?" a burly man suggested with a smile. Everyone agreed, and the scene became quite lively. Just as they were about to celebrate, a person ran in with a pale face and yelled, "Myanmar has fallen." This caused the lively scene to instantly die down, and everyone looked quite confused. How could Myanmar have suddenly fallen? Wasn't it because of the void barrier, and Qin's army had just retreated? How could Myanmar have fallen? They simply could not understand. However, the strategist's expressions fell as they thought of something. They asked that person to explain the situation in detail before crying out, "We've fallen into a trap. Qin's target has always been the four countries, and attacking us was just a ruse. Hurry and reinforce the remaining three countries. They're in danger." Zhao Fu had a savage smile on his face as he stood above Myanmar. After taking revenge in the central region, he had returned to Qin. However, Zhao Fu had not appeared with Qin's army for more than a month, so he naturally had other goals. There were still 23 corps, and the remaining 3 corps, 2,000 city lords, 1,500 wyverns, and 1,500 corps soul commanders were all going to be sent to Zhao Fu. All of this showed that the various strategists already knew about Great Qin's various trump cards, so they naturally made all sorts of preparations against Great Qin. This was a battle of high intelligence, and they could not afford to be careless. They were all famous strategists in history, and Zhao Fu would not look down on them. The way to victory was to use trump cards that they did not know about, as well as their abilities. Only then would they be able to catch them off guard and achieve great results. Whether it was the wyverns or the corps soul commanders, Zhao Fu had other trump cards. They had no secrets. Now, Zhao Fu had another trump card, the 60,000 spiders. These spiders had stage 2 strength, and because they were cave creatures, they were quite skilled at digging. Their blade-like claws could easily cut through soil, and they could also use corrosive gases to dissolve soil, making them incredibly fast. They were able to silently dig tunnels, and Zhao Fu used this method to cross the void zone and reach Myanmar. Because it was quite far, it took them 1 month to reach Myanmar. Of course, there was another tunnel that led to Laos. Bai Qi resolutely led his army to attack the central region, and this attracted many gazes, covering for Zhao Fu's army. The instant they arrived at Myanmar, Zhao Fu released the 8 aquatic beasts, the wyverns, corps soul commanders, and many city lords, and they started to wreak havoc. Zhao Fu showed no mercy and killed anyone he saw. He quickly took down Myanmar, and Myanmar did not even have time to react. They had been too confident and thought that the defensive zone would be able to stop Qin. Moreover, they had only just received news of Zhao Fu's victory, so they had not expected that they would be in danger and had been too careless. Spears giving off powerful auras shot into the players' cities, and before the Myanmar players could react, a magic formation spread out. Countless people were shocked and tried to escape, but it was too late. These spears all had magic formations sealed within them. Because setting up magic formations required time, in order to complete them as quickly as possible, Zhao Fu sealed the magic formations within spears. That way, the magic formations would be able to instantly activate and turn all of the players into their true bodies. Of course, these spears were all specially made, and not only did they contain many spatial stones, but they also contained all sorts of precious materials. Otherwise, they would not have been able to seal magic formations. Myanmar had 400 regions and 1,200 or so city lords. Let alone the wyverns and corps soul commanders, just the 8 aquatic beast kings alone would be enough to destroy them. Apart from the high-end forces, Zhao Fu also took out 100 million soldiers from his regular army and used a militia to support Bai Qi's army. Zhao Fu also brought 3 corps to help Qin control the situation. Myanmar fell incredibly quickly, and Zhao Fu immediately found the pagan dynasty and ferociously attacked it. Its legatee was a round-faced young man, and his nation armament was a cattail, which was not weak at all. However, in front of Zhao Fu, he could not even withstand a single blow. In order to quickly deal with him, Zhao Fu did not use his nation armament, and instead used the 6 Paths demon images and Qin royal seal's power. In less than 3 attacks, he was able to deal with him. After taking down Myanmar and controlling the situation, Zhao Fu led his people to attack the next country, which was Thailand, which was next to Myanmar. At the same time, the Vietnamese faction that had pledged allegiance to Great Qin found an excuse to attack Laos. Laos was immediately infuriated and sent soldiers to suppress the Vietnamese faction, expelling them in one fell swoop. However, at that moment, Zhao Mo and Elise brought back a group of city lords and wyverns and started a massacre within Myanmar. Their methods were incredibly cruel and caused people's hearts to tremble. As a demon's sovereign king, Zhao Mo liked to crush everything. So wherever he went, blood would spurt everywhere, and there would be piles of muddy corpses on the ground. Elise liked to cut people into countless small pieces. What was even more perverted was that she liked to listen to the screams of others, so she would slowly kill them instead of giving them a quick death. This was naturally incomparably painful. There were 2,000 or so city lords and wyverns who had returned from Bai Chi's army. There were also 2,000 or so city lords and 2,000 or so wyverns. Because the corpse soul commanders could not be brought back with spirit pet rings, they could not be brought back. Chapter 923. With Vietnam attacking internally and Qin attacking externally, Laos was incredibly weak and was easily destroyed. At the same time, facing such ferocious attacks, many people were willing to surrender, making things much easier to resolve. Lao's dynasty was the Lan Tsang kingdom, and its nation armament was an elephant made of gold. It was quite powerful, but facing the ruthless demon sovereign king, Zhao Mo, and the cruel Elise, it was not a match for them. In the end, it was bitten in half by Zhao Mo and devoured. Seeing Zhao Mo eat the dynasty legatee, Elise licked her lips. To them, a king was indeed the most delicious food, as its king's blood would be of great help to them. However, after thinking about it, Elise seemed to understand something. She stopped thinking about it and left with a chuckle. After destroying Laos, Zhao Mo and Elise led their people to continue attacking Cambodia. The various factions hurried over to save the four countries. After the four countries were destroyed, Qin would be able to unify the northern side and would not have to worry about anything in the future. They would be able to focus on dealing with China and would not have to worry about being attacked from behind. Moreover, after Qin destroyed the four countries, its strength would once again increase. When that time came, they would face even greater pressure, so they definitely could not destroy the four countries. However, they were too late. In the distance, mournful dragon cries continuously sounded out, meaning that dynasty legatees were being destroyed. The four countries could not be saved, but they did not want to give up and continued to rush over. However, at that moment, Bai Chi led the remaining city lords, wyvern corps, soul commanders, and 20 corps to stop them from going to the four countries, resulting in another massive battle. Qin still had a big advantage, as they had many top-tier forces left behind. Most importantly, they had 20 corps, which had stats that countered city lords. A single corps could deal with 70 or 80 city lords with no problems. Back at Zhao Fu, after Zhao Fu had destroyed Myanmar, he had immediately attacked Thailand. Thailand had 350 regions in total, and they were slightly weaker than Myanmar. At most, they had 1,000 or so city lords, and they were completely powerless. The ones who were the most excited were the 8 aquatic beasts. They could casually devour humans, and they had Zhao Fu's permission to do so. They excitedly re-entered the city and attacked the city hall, as the city hall was their most delicious snack. In front of the aquatic beast king, a city lord was like a sheep that couldn't resist at all. The aquatic beast king could eat them, but this time, Zhao Fu couldn't let them digest the city creation stones, so he kept them alive. The six-eyed demon whale gave off a mountain-toppling aura as it descended above a city and savagely looked at the city below. There were still traces of blood around its mouth because it had just eaten hundreds of thousands of people. Sensing that terrifying aura, the city lord was so scared that his legs became weak. Countless residents looked at the sky in terror, as if they could already see them being devoured. Everyone understood that there was no hope for Thailand. "I'm willing to surrender. Please don't harm my residents." The city lord knelt on the ground as he cried out in terror. Seeing that the city lord had knelt down and begged for mercy, the others also knelt down. They didn't dare to look at the savage, six-eyed demon whale in the sky, and their bodies continuously trembled under this aura. They were filled with terror. The six-eyed demon whale dissatisfiedly harumphed. If these people surrendered and begged for mercy, it would definitely eat them. However, things were different now. It had submitted to Zhao Fu, and Zhao Fu had ordered that those who did not surrender could be dealt with as they pleased, but those who surrendered could not be harmed. Thinking about the days of torture, the six-eyed demon whale suppressed its desire to devour and swung its tail, bringing with it a wild gale as it slowly headed towards the next city. After escaping with their lives, the system main city looked at the six-eyed demon whale in the distance and finally relaxed. Thinking about the future, their expressions became dim. In the future, there would no longer be Thailand, nor would there be any more 4 countries. It was all over. Zhao Fu came to the Sukhothai kingdom, and its legatee was a beautiful person. She had an exquisite face, a slim figure, and a pair of large breasts. However, Zhao Fu wasn't sure if she was a man or a woman. After all, this was Thailand, and just because someone looked like a beauty did not mean that they were a beauty. Even if they had breasts and a voice that sounded like a woman's, it was impossible. Zhao Fu gave off an incredibly terrifying might that covered the sky above the Sukhothai kingdom. Everyone looked at Zhao Fu in terror, and they understood that the person standing in the sky was the most terrifying person in the world, Qin's legatee. Myanmar has been destroyed, and you'll be next. We don't want to waste words. Either submit or die with us. Zhao Fu's voice was incredibly cold and filled with killing intent, and he did not place them in his eyes at all. However, they were not angry at all, only terrified. After all, Qin had passed through the void zones, which meant that they were doomed. Moreover, the system announcement that Myanmar had been destroyed had sounded throughout the entire Midland continent. Now, everyone knew that Myanmar had been destroyed and that Laos had been destroyed, and they would be next. Zhao Fu had not lied at all. The Sukhothai kingdom's legatee's expression was quite unsightly, and he did not say anything for a while, hesitating. However, Zhao Fu suddenly acted, and a boundless power sent him flying. The legatee was unable to resist at all, and he crashed to the ground and coughed up a large mouthful of blood. Even though everyone else was terrified, seeing that their legatee had been attacked, they gripped their weapons and exploded out with powerful auras as they rushed at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu disdainfully coldly laughed and stretched out a hand, preparing to start a massacre. Zhao Fu had always been quite angry towards them, and now, Zhao Fu only wanted to take revenge. Only by killing would he be able to vent his anger. "Stand down," the legatee lightly shouted as he wiped away the blood at his lips and stood up. He knew that if his people rushed up, they would only die. A precious jade that gave off boundless white light and an incredibly powerful aura appeared, and the entire heavens and earth started to change. This power was filled with the aura of a country's history and culture, and this was Thailand's nation armament, the nation precious jade. Oomph. You overestimate yourself. Seeing the legatee explode out with his nation armament's power, Zhao Fu understood his decision. He coldly harumphed and used all of his power, showing no mercy. In just a few exchanges, the legatee started to feel despair. Even after using his nation armament, he still could not go all out. Not only was he heavily injured, but the next attack from Qin's legatee would take his life. In the end, Zhao Fu's sword pierced through his chest, ending his life. Following this, the Sukhothai kingdom was destroyed, and Thailand was truly destroyed. Chapter 924. Roar. In the distance, a sorrowful, unwilling, and pained dragon's roar sounded throughout the sky. It was the Khmer Kingdom's dragon's roar, and the Khmer Kingdom had finally been conquered. System announcement. All of Khmer's regions have been conquered by Qin. Khmer has been destroyed, and all of its fate has fused into Qin, becoming Qin's fate. Hearing this system announcement, Zhao Fu gave a satisfied smile. The 4 countries have been destroyed by Qin, and there would be no more battles in the northern side. Now, Qin's people would come to clean up the mess, and Zhao Fu headed to where the various factions were. After hearing that system announcement, the various city lords felt a chill in their hearts, and their faces became pale. There was no point in rushing over now, so the countless city lords started to retreat. By the time Zhao Fu arrived, they would have long since run away. In the end, this battle ended with Qin's victory, and the price was the destruction of the four countries. What was even more shocking was that the players of the four countries had all disappeared from the real world. Not a single person had stayed behind, and the entire world had turned into a ghostly realm. Countless people looked incredibly shocked. This news was incredibly shocking, as it was not just a few people who had disappeared, but everyone from the four countries. When a country was about to be destroyed, everyone in that country would receive a system announcement. As such, even those who were in the real world would enter the Heaven Awakened world to take a look, and they would all be wiped out by Qin. Once this news spread, the entire world started to panic. Thinking about how Qin had destroyed the four countries in the Heaven Awakened world, everyone knew that this had to do with Qin. Great Qin had been quite ruthless this time. All of its people had disappeared, not leaving a single person behind. Where had so many people gone? Were they dead or alive? No one knew, but if they had fallen into Qin's hands, their fates would definitely not be good. Another country that had disappeared was Vietnam. Now that 5 countries had disappeared, everyone fell silent. Qin had displayed his terrifying power, and the countries that had been destroyed by him would not only be in the Heaven Awakened world, but also in the real world. It was possible that everyone would be slaughtered by Qin. This was undoubtedly the most terrifying thing, because the real world was their greatest protection. Now that this protection had disappeared, it meant that they were no longer safe. The factions that had been hostile to Qin now didn't want to submit to Qin, and their morale was greatly affected. The system factions to the east and west of Qin understood that they definitely weren't a match for Qin. Now that the situation was clear, they didn't want to die, so they raised their white flags and were willing to submit to King Qin. There were also some system forces that weren't willing to submit, but they didn't dare to stay in their original location. They could only move to other regions in hopes of obtaining protection. In the end, Qin was able to unify the northern side, which was the first time in the history of the Heaven Awakened world. It was an important step in human history, and Qin had become the most powerful kingdom in the human world. All of the other kingdoms were terrified, and this would be a major event in history, known as the destruction of the 5 kingdoms. Now, all of the system factions had accepted those who had submitted to Qin, and those who had resisted had all been killed. Now, it was time to deal with the players. The players were inferior to indigenous residents, and Zhao Fu didn't care about them at all. Not only were they snobbish, but they were also cowardly and useless. However, if he slaughtered all of these people, that would be hundreds of millions of lives. Just as Zhao Fu had this thought, even Bai Qi couldn't help but try to persuade Zhao Fu. After all, these people were all people who had given up resisting, and there were so many of them that even Bai Qi couldn't kill them all. Now, Zhao Fu had gathered all of the players from the 5 countries together. The Vietnamese factions that had submitted to Zhao Fu were naturally given preferential treatment, as they could become members of Qin's faction if they performed well. This was something that they could only dream of. However, the ordinary Vietnamese players who had trusted them felt incredibly furious. After all, the people they had trusted had lied to them, and this was the second time. However, even though they were furious, they could only endure it, or else they would die. They had thought that with the 2 body talismans they would not have to be afraid, but Qin had gone to the extreme and turned them into their true bodies, causing them to lose this opportunity. His Majesty is coming. All of you kneel obediently. If you dare to be disrespectful to His Majesty will punish you, and your entire family will die. A large man wearing armor shouted at the crowd of players with a ferocious expression. Most of the players looked at Qin's soldiers in fear and obediently knelt on the ground, waiting for His Majesty to arrive. However, some people were unwilling to listen, such as a hooligan-looking young man who had his nose in the air. He even slapped the bottom of a woman in front of him, causing the woman to feel furious but not dare to say anything, as she was afraid that Qin's soldiers would come. However, what she was worried about still happened. A soldier in black armor walked over, and without saying anything, he chopped off the man's head with a single slash. Warm blood splattered on the surrounding people, causing them to scream. The soldier glared at the crowd and immediately yelled, "If you make any more noise and disturb His Majesty, I'll kill all of you." This scared countless people, and they could only endure it. Parents with children covered their children's eyes, not letting them see such a bloody and cruel scene. Because the woman was right in front of them, she was the one with the most blood. A person had died so easily, as if they were killing an animal. Life was just that cheap, and the woman felt incredibly terrified. Her body continuously trembled, but she held back her tears. Otherwise, she would die. Ark! Another scream sounded out. A stubborn old man said that he was not willing to kneel, and he had a lot of backbone. However, the saber was merciless, and a head rolled on the ground. 10 or so more people were killed, and only then did the area calm down. The corpses of the people who had been killed were dragged away and thrown to the side. After a while, the number of people who had died reached hundreds of thousands, and their corpses were piled up into small mountains. Now, it was completely silent, and all of the players knelt on the ground, not daring to make a sound. "His Majesty has arrived." A loud cry sounded out, and the soldiers all knelt down. Zhao Fu walked out from the other side, and looking at the players, he coldly harumphed. He still remembered how intensely they had resisted and how they had repeatedly tried to kill him. Even though Zhao Fu did not slaughter them, he had made a decision and said, "We wanted to kill all of you, but the ministers pleaded for mercy, and we spared you." Chapter 925. This was Qin's last chance for them. As untouchables, they were treated quite poorly, and they were not treated like ordinary commoners in Qin. If they wanted to improve their status, they could only work for Qin. If they dared to show any disloyalty, they would be killed without mercy. Zhao Fu announced the punishment for the countless players before turning and leaving. The countless players kneeling on the ground let out a sigh of relief. Their lives had been saved. Following this, Qin's civil officials started to deal with the players. They planned where they would go, as well as other matters. Zhao Fu returned to the royal court and tallied up the gains from this war. First of all, there were 137 regions in total, which provided Qin with 3,500 great cities and 1,000 cities. The population was a terrifying one, 5 billion indigenous residents, and there were also 200 million players. Moreover, the regions in the north and east of China had also been conquered by Qin. In total, 1,500 great cities had surrendered, providing Qin with 600 million people. In total, there were 6,000 cities and 3 billion people. In total, Qin's population was 7 billion. Great Qin controlled 3,720 regions, 8,428 great cities, 2,921 cities, and 10,000 or so cities. Now that Great Qin had unified the northern side, its strength was incredibly terrifying and could strike fear into anyone's heart. Next, it was time for rewards. Zhao Fu gave out rewards to his subordinates and called over a large group of women. These women were all top-notch women, and there were thousands of them. Zhao Fu had them choose as additional rewards. It had been 4 years, and it seemed that none of his subordinates had such intentions. Zhao Fu did not care too much about so many women. After all, Zhao Fu had already picked out the women with massive amounts of phoenix chi, and he was going to give them to Zhao Fu as rewards. However, not a single person dared to pick one for Zhao Fu to enjoy. In their hearts, Zhao Fu was a lustful person. How could they dare to compete with Zhao Fu for such beautiful women? Moreover, they were focused on the development of the empire and did not have anyone they liked. Zhao Fu felt quite helpless. Since they did not want them, Zhao Fu could not give them back. After all, it had taken him great effort to collect them, and they had gathered all of the top-tier beauties from the 5 countries. Celebrities, internet celebrities, nobles, and others were all gathered here. Facing these women, Zhao Fu did not feel embarrassed at all, so he left them in the palace. This time, the spiders had made a great contribution. In order to bring out the throne's power and Spider Empress Elisa's power, as well as satisfy her request, Zhao Fu ordered for a palace to be built in the place where the spiders were being nurtured to be called the Spirit Spider Palace. Moreover, Elise also asked for a large number of spirit pills. Zhao Fu did not know what she wanted, but because she had made a great contribution this time, he did not ask any questions and agreed to her requests. Now that they had obtained so many regions, it was almost twice as much as before. Now, Qin's task was to clear out regions and build a great wall to protect 3,720 regions. Zhao Fu decided to upgrade Qin to a level 3 Marquis Kingdom. Because Qin's spider's trunk heart had been exposed, the various factions had made preparations, so Zhao Fu did not plan to continue attacking. Instead, he focused on digesting the regions and stabilizing the situation in the northern side. Only then would Qin be stable, and could he start his plan to unify China. Now, it was time to refine the four-nation armaments and strengthen the great Qi nation's foundation. After a while, hundreds of women collapsed on the ground, their bodies glistening. Apart from the women of the various dynasties, there were also the wives and daughters of major figures in the real world, as well as the wives of the people in power and the people in power themselves. For example, the noble-looking woman under Zhao Fu had once been the person empowering you. Now that you had fallen, she had been brought to Qin. Her phoenix chi was many times greater than that of ordinary women from dynasties, and it was incredibly massive. Your Majesty, think about the Vietnamese commoners, she flirtatiously said as she hugged Zhao Fu's arm and tried to curry favor with Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu lightly nodded and put on his clothes. He took out the four-nation armaments and prepared to refine them. He once again gathered people with great fate and activated the heaven and earth refining formation. The entire Midland continent's fate gathered. A massive cauldron that gave off the aura of the heavens, and earth stood in the boundless void. Countless kingdoms' expressions were unsightly as they looked towards Qin. Now that the 5 kingdoms had been destroyed, they were in great danger and felt incredibly worried. The four-nation armament seals were burned away by formless flames, and Qin's fate madly flowed into them, causing the four-nation armaments to go through great changes. In the end, the rainbow cauldron turned into countless traces of fate and dissipated, and the four-nation armaments giving off intense light and terrifying auras slowly descended from the sky. Zhao Fu caught the four-nation armaments and found that they had gone through great changes. Before, the nation treasures gave off a light that was as bright as dawn, but now they gave off a black light. After looking at their information, Zhao Fu felt quite satisfied and placed them next to the city heart. Even though Qin had started to clear out regions, he could not just sit there and do nothing, allowing the various factions to ally together. As such, Qin now had another task, which was to divide the other factions and recruit more people. These people just wanted to scare them, and it was possible that they would not listen to Zhao Fu's words. As such, Zhao Fu said, "Right now, the 5 kingdoms are facing the consequences of offending Qin. If you don't want to be destroyed, choose to remain neutral or submit to Qin. Qin can give you everything you want, but if you still choose to become enemies with Qin, you will be killed without mercy." After being threatened like this, many people from the allied factions backed out. Even if others wanted to join, they did not dare to openly express their opinions. The unification of the northern side of the Midland continent caused all of the kingdoms in the other 3 directions to feel quite nervous. Now, this was no longer just a matter for China. After Qin completely consolidated the northern side, Qin would truly have the power to unify the Midland continent. It could be said that the situation in the Midland continent had become quite tense, and the other continents were not at peace either. After Qin unified the northern side of the Midland continent, he became a great threat to them. However, most of the system factions did not want to participate and chose to remain neutral to avoid trouble. They did not want to offend anyone, and that was Qin's intimidation. The ones who were the most active were the countless player factions. However, Even though there were many of them, they were quite weak. Chapter 926. This was Qin's last chance for them. As untouchables, they were treated quite poorly, and they were not treated like ordinary commoners in Qin. If they wanted to improve their status, they could only work for Qin. If they dared to show any disloyalty, they would be killed without mercy. Zhao Fu announced the punishment for the countless players before turning and leaving. The countless players kneeling on the ground let out a sigh of relief. Their lives had been saved. Following this, Qin's officials started to deal with the players. They planned where they would go, as well as other matters. Zhao Fu returned to the royal court and tallied up the gains from this war. First of all, there were 137 regions in total, which provided Qin with 3,500 great cities and 1,000 cities. The population was a terrifying one: 5 billion indigenous residents, and there were also 200 million players. Moreover, the remaining regions in the northern side of China also collapsed and were taken in by Great Qin. 1,500 great cities in total surrendered, providing 600 million people for Great Qin. In total, there were 6,000 great cities and 3 billion people, and Qin's population was now 7 billion. Great Qin controlled 3,720 regions, 8,428 great cities, 2,921 cities, and 10,000 or so cities. Now that Great Qin had unified the northern side, its strength was incredibly terrifying and could strike fear into anyone's heart. Next, it was time for rewards. Zhao Fu gave out rewards to his subordinates and called over a large group of women. These women were all top-notch women, and there were thousands of them. Zhao Fu had them choose as additional rewards. It had already been 4 years, and it seemed that none of his subordinates had such intentions. Zhao Fu did not care too much about so many women, as Zhao Fu had already picked out the women with massive amounts of phoenix qi. Now, these women were given to Zhao Fu as rewards. However, not a single person dared to pick one for Zhao Fu to enjoy. In their hearts, Zhao Fu was already a lecherous person. How could they dare to compete with Zhao Fu for such beautiful women? Moreover, they were focused on the development of the empire, and there was no one they liked. Zhao Fu felt quite helpless. Since they did not want them, Zhao Fu could not give them back. After all, it had taken him great effort to collect them, and they had gathered all of the top-tier beauties from the 5 countries. Celebrities, internet celebrities, nobles, and others were all gathered here. Facing these women, Zhao Fu did not feel embarrassed, so he left them in the palace. This time, the spiders had made a great contribution. In order to bring out the throne's power and Spider Empress Elisa's power, as well as satisfy her request, Zhao Fu ordered for a palace to be built in the place where the spiders were being nurtured to be called the Spirit Spider Palace. Moreover, Elise also asked for a large number of spirit pills. Zhao Fu did not know what she wanted, but because she had made a great contribution this time, he did not ask any questions and agreed to her requests. Now that they had obtained so many regions, it was almost twice as much as before. Now, Qin's task was to clear out regions and build a great wall to protect 3,720 regions. Zhao Fu decided to upgrade Qin to a level 3 Marquis Kingdom. Because Qin's spiders had been exposed, the various factions had made preparations, so Zhao Fu did not plan to continue attacking. Instead, he focused on digesting the regions he had obtained and stabilizing the situation in the northern side. Only then would Qin be stable, and could he start his plan to unify China. Now, he had to refine the 4-nation armaments and strengthen Qin's foundation. After doing it, hundreds of pale women lay on the ground. Apart from the women of the various dynasties, there were also the wives and daughters of the major figures in the real world, as well as the wives of the people in power and the people in power themselves. For example, the noble-looking woman under Zhao Fu had once been the person in power in Vietnam. Now that Vietnam had fallen, she had been brought to Qin, and her phoenix qi was many times greater than that of a woman from a dynasty. "Your Majesty, you should think about the Vietnamese commoners," she said as she flirtatiously hugged Zhao Fu's arm and tried to curry favor with him. Zhao Fu lightly nodded and put on his clothes. He took out the four-nation armaments and prepared to refine them. He once again gathered people with great fate and activated the heaven and earth refining formation. The entire Midland continent's fate gathered. Chapter 9:27. The Book of Tao was written by Laozi Li during the spring and autumn period, and it was also called the True Book of Tao, Laozi 5,000 words and Laozi's 5,000 writings. It was a work written by the pre-Qin scholars before they split up. It was respected by the scholars of that time and was an important source of Taoist philosophy. It was also the foundation of Taoism. The Book of Tao was split into two parts. The first part was called the Book of Virtue, and the second part was called the Book of Tao. It was later changed to the Book of Tao, with chapter 37 before chapter 38, followed by the Book of Virtue, which was split into 81 chapters. The Tao here did not refer to the morals of ordinary people. The Tao here referred to the Tao of all things, and the Virtue referred to the methods and theories of the Tao. The book focused on morality, discussing the ways of cultivating oneself, governing a country, using troops, and maintaining good health. Moreover, it mostly focused on politics. It was the so-called sage on the inside and king on the outside study. The meaning of the text was profound and broad, and it was known as the king of all classics. The Book of Tao was one of the greatest works in Chinese history, and it had a deep impact on traditional philosophy, science, politics, and religion. According to the statistics of the World Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, Tao Te Ching is the cultural masterpiece that has been translated into foreign languages and published the most after the Bible. As one of the ancient sages, even if Laozi did not have any cultivation, his thoughts were extraordinary, and his works would definitely be extraordinary. Zhao Fu just wanted to randomly say a few sentences. If it worked, he would be able to trick many brain bugs, and if he could not use a profound language, he could at least act pretentious. The Tao could be said, but it was not the Tao. The name could be named, but it was not the name. Nameless was the beginning of all things, and famous was the mother of all things. Thus, when there is no desire, one can observe its profundity, and when there is desire, one can observe its profundity. The two came from the same source, but had different names. They were both profound, and they were the gates of profundity. Zhao Fu casually said the first chapter of the Book of Tao. If a human saw this, they would definitely curse at Zhao Fu for being a liar. After all, many people already knew the first chapter of the Book of Tao, so saying the first chapter would expose him. However, with how precious the Heaven Spirit Steel was, how could a normal human have one? No one would be able to discover it. But when Zhao Fu sent out a few words, the chat area fell into dead silence. Zhao Fu waited for a full half an hour, but no one spoke. Zhao Fu was startled as he looked at the Heaven Spirit Steel. What's going on? The Heaven Spirit Steel was broken. Why was no one saying anything? Even if it's fake and they don't understand, at least someone should say it. He still needed to trade for a large number of brain bugs, and the fish scale world was waiting for him to conquer it. After waiting for a while, Zhao Fu couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Why did he have to act so pretentiously? If he had just made a deal with them honestly, he would have been able to collect cerebrate worms soon. Why do you want to covet free cerebrate worms? Couldn't he be more realistic? Now, he couldn't even get a single brain worm. At that moment, Zhao Fu did not know that a piece of shocking news was being spread among the heaven-awakened world's high-grade cultivators. A higher being is actually talking about the true meaning of Tao in the Heaven Spirit Steel. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and if we miss it, we'll regret it for the rest of our lives. Hearing this, everyone disdainfully mocked. How could a top-tier existence like that care about small cultivators like them? No higher being would talk about the Tao that they had comprehended with great difficulty to others. How could there be such a thing in the world? At first, no one believed it, but as the news spread, it was said that many people had broken through. Many people could not help but feel curious, so they entered the Heaven Spirit Steel. A few words that gave off rainbow-colored light gave off a formless and boundless aura, causing everyone's souls to tremble. Those words seemed to transform into a world of their own, and they felt as if they were instantly pulled in, unable to extricate themselves as they sank into the comprehension of the Tao. These words were like the will of the heavens, and they were revered by all creatures. No one dared to say anything in fear that these words would disappear. This matter became even bigger, and the first people to find out were naturally the Heaven Spirit Financial Group. They had naturally given Zhao Fu his supreme level account and badge to Zhao Fu in order to establish a good relationship with him, and they paid great attention to his every action. As such, when Zhao Fu said such profound words, this news was immediately reported to the higher-ups. When the Heaven Spirit Steel heard that it was Zhao Fu, it did not look down on him at all. However, after hearing Zhao Fu's words, its expression became incredibly serious. After all, someone who could speak such profound words most likely had comprehended more than them. How could they not feel shocked? With their cultivations, they were already existences at the peak of this world, and the only people who could surpass them were those who were halfway into the celestial realm. However, how could someone from a remote region who had not been in the heaven-awakened world for very long have such profound comprehension? Suddenly, the Heaven Spirit Steel's higher-ups thought of a terrifying possibility, which was that this person had once been a half-step celestial and had used some heaven-defying method to reincarnate. This explained why that person had such a terrifying bloodline and could awaken the Celestial Emperor Star and Nether Emperor Star. After all, with that person's profound cultivation, it would not have been too difficult for him to do such a thing. In the heaven-awakened world, celestials were the most terrifying existences and reigned above the heavens. Even countless gods and demons were nothing more than ants in front of them. For a half-step celestial to choose to reincarnate, everyone felt that a massive conspiracy had covered the entire heaven-awakened world. This conspiracy could topple the heaven-awakened world and could even cause a catastrophe. After thinking for a while, someone could not help but say, "Looks like we've underestimated the importance of this matter. That person is incredibly dangerous." Hearing this, everyone sighed and nodded. Following this, the Tiandao sect was sent into an even greater commotion. After reading those words, they felt incredibly shocked because those words were incredibly close to the Tiandao sect's Tao. However, an outsider had said them, and it was one of the ancestors of the Tiandao sect. Because of this, the Tiandao sect's sect master, the white-robed elder giving off celestial qi, went to ask the ancestors who were in closed-door training. He found out that this person's comprehension was above theirs, meaning that this person was not someone from the Tiandao sect. Even though there was an even more terrifying existence in the Tiandao sect, that person had been in closed-door training for 1,000 years, and even the Tiandao sect's sect master did not dare to disturb him. However, those words were free, and the Tiandao sect's sect master immediately ordered people to carve those words on a mountain for the Tiandao sect's disciples to study. The ordinary Tiandao sect's disciples felt incredibly shocked and asked which higher being had comprehended those words. Back then, the Tiandao sect's sect master had not explained much, and news quickly spread that the person who had comprehended those words was a higher being from the Tiandao sect. Chapter 928. In actuality, they were accusing Zhao Fu unjustly. How could Zhao Fu be so selfless? Hadn't he agreed to exchange brain bugs for comprehension? These people had actually forgotten. They were simply too shameless. Of course, Zhao Fu did not know what was going on. Seeing that no one was talking, he thought that something had gone wrong, so he decided to leave the Heaven Spirit Steel. Luckily, he did not disappoint Zhao Fu this time. After Zhao Fu had left, some people remembered what he had said, so they gave him brain bugs for free. Now, Zhao Fu had 2,000 brain bugs, which was more than enough. Before, Zhao Fu had only needed 1,100 brain bugs to control the city lords that he had not controlled. Now that he had subtracted 1,200 brain bugs from 2,000, Zhao Fu could control 900 more city lords. With this, Zhao Fu would be able to control 2,300 city lords. This was a massive faction, And with this faction, Zhao Fu would be able to clear out the Darkwater continent. If he could unify the Darkwater continent, Qin's hidden faction would become even more monstrous. With the 2,000 brain bugs, Zhao Fu once again snuck into the fish scale world and went to the faction controlled by the Darkwater continent. There were far more people who were not controlled by the brain bugs than those who were, so he had to be careful. Zhao Fu used their trust in the System City lords to split them into groups and slowly deal with them. Sometimes, he would call them over and warmly entertain them while secretly controlling them. Other times, he would use massive power to suppress them, and Zhao Fu was able to control 1,400 city lords. The Darkwater continent was one of the 7 continents in the fish scale world, and it was quite big. It had 6,000 regions in total and roughly 19,000 city lords. Now that Zhao Fu controlled 1,400 city lords, he controlled almost 10% of the Darkwater continent's power. Zhao Fu found an opportunity to use up the remaining 900 brain bugs, which was to sneak into some system main cities and place brain bugs in the city lords' heads to control them. Because there were quite a few of them, Zhao Fu decided to stay here for a week. Now, there were 2,300 city lords under Qin's control in Darkwater. Because of how powerful he was, many city lords continued to join him. At the same time, this attracted the attention of the other factions in the Darkwater continent. After all, the threat of 2,300 city lords was not just a small one, and the other continents were also quite concerned about such a massive system faction. After all, very few system factions had such great strength, and many people had been sent to investigate the situation. Right now, Zhao Fu did not have any other plans. He first wanted to clear out the regions and stabilize his foundation. Now, he had 2,300 cities and controlled 700 or so regions. If he could clear out all of the factions, he would become even more powerful. When that time came, it would be time for them to expand. Of course, they would mainly clear out player factions, while system factions could invite other factions to cooperate with them. After all, it was safer for everyone to work together, so it would be easier for them to succeed. Zhao Fu felt that it would be very easy to take down the Darkwater continent, and there would not be any surprises. When that time came, Qin's strength would greatly increase. Their progress here was already much faster than the Night Dynasties. After taking care of the matters in the fish scale world, Zhao Fu went to the Dark Demon world to take a look. The Dark Demon world's progress was not as fast as the fish scale worlds. The alliance that they had established had gathered some top-tier factions, and they had attacked some system factions and weaker player factions. However, their gains were not great, and they still had to split the gains. Even though the Night Dynasty had taken quite a bit, to Zhao Fu, it was still not enough. However, that was the Night Dynasty situation. Only after Zhao Fu unified the Midland continent would he have time to help the Night Dynasty develop and unify the Southern continent. After taking care of so many things, Zhao Fu once again went to the Legacy Land to collect talisman stones. However, he had never thought that 2 big things would happen. The first was that a higher being had passed by and seemed to be looking for something. This caused the surrounding dozens of worlds to feel quite uneasy, as that higher being had not hidden his aura at all. The sky had been dyed blood red, and he had just flown by. Even though he had only flown by for an instant, the worlds had fallen silent, and they lay on the ground in terror, not daring to move at all. However, that aura caused countless kingdoms to fall into despair. That power was like the hand of the heavens pressing down on everyone's bodies, and no one could resist at all. Even a king was like a grain of sand facing a ferocious ocean. That feeling was enough to make one suffocate. The power of a higher being was incredibly terrifying, let alone a godly spirit. Even destroying an entire world would be incredibly easy. Then why did he seem to be looking for something? This was because that higher being had flown back and forth a few times, which meant that he definitely had a goal. If he was just passing by, why would he fly back and forth for no reason? This was something that did not seem possible at all. This matter caused the surrounding dozens of worlds to pay close attention to it. After all, someone who stood at the peak of the heaven-awakened world would not come to their barren land for no reason. He definitely had something to do. Fortunately, that higher being did not do anything, allowing the surrounding worlds to let out a sigh of relief. Otherwise, if a higher being descended, it would be a catastrophe for the surrounding worlds, and it would be a catastrophe that could not be resisted at all. Even though that higher being did not say anything, some people guessed that it was because of the two stars that had descended. After all, those stars were incredibly powerful, and even kings would want to kneel and submit to them. Only those two stars could attract the attention of a higher being. Otherwise, they could not understand how a barren land like theirs could attract a higher being to descend. Most importantly, that higher being had passed by the grassy world the most, and he had even stopped for a while. This caused the entire grassy race to panic, and there was a lot of chaos. Only when that higher being left did the chaos stop. Hearing this, Zhao Fu was given a cold sweat, and his hair stood on end as his heart sank into icy water. Was that higher being coming for him? This was what Zhao Fu was most worried about. After all, there were many quests to kill him on the Heaven Spirit Steel, and if he was targeted by a higher being, it would be very difficult for Zhao Fu to survive. If he was killed by them, his soul would be destroyed, and he would truly disappear. Also, had that higher being who had descended to the human world really come to find him? Zhao Fu felt that it was quite possible. After all, that higher being had descended once before, so he definitely had some way of locating the human world. Chapter 9:29. Zhao Fu did not believe that it had nothing to do with him. What should he do now? If he fell into his hands, he would definitely die. Qin's death would be something that he could casually do, as higher beings could cause others to despair. The only thing that made Zhao Fu feel at ease was that the human world was protected by the Heaven Domain boundary, and the Heaven Domain boundary had the Heaven Domain power. Even a higher being would find it difficult to forcefully break through. Zhao Fu racked his brains, but could not think of any way to exchange for a higher being's star mark. After all, an ant could not defeat an elephant no matter what, and that was how powerless Zhao Fu was. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Zhao Fu anxiously thought to himself. This was not an ordinary crisis. It was a crisis that Qin could not deal with at all. Perhaps without Tuoba Qin and those two Emperor stars, Qin would at most have to face the grassy, dark demon, and fish scale worlds. This would not have anything to do with a higher being, so Zhao Fu would not have felt so much pressure. It would be a lie if Zhao Fu said that he did not regret it. However, thinking about Tuoba Qin, Zhao Fu would take her in again. If someone treated him sincerely, he would not let them down. However, he had to hide something like the origin mark. In actuality, when the Emperor stars had awakened, the origin mark had not been something that Zhao Fu could control, which was why things had turned out like this. After thinking about it for a while, Zhao Fu finally decided that if that higher being came to find him, Zhao Fu could only rely on another top-tier faction and hope that they would protect him and Qin. The price for doing so would not be small, but Zhao Fu had no other choice. This was the only way he could resist a higher being. Moreover, the World Protector and Legatee could give him the world's source energy, which was naturally quite terrifying and could prevent a world from being destroyed. In the eyes of others, this power was extremely powerful. However, in the face of an almighty existence that could easily destroy a world, it was still unable to fight back. Most importantly, this power did not exist all the time. Instead, with the disappearance of the heavenly domain boundary, the power of the World Protector's inheritor would also disappear. This was because every world would eventually fuse into the Heaven Awakened world, and as the world fused, the world's consciousness power to protect the world would continuously weaken. With Zhao Fu's status as the World Protector, he would be able to obtain the world's source energy. However, as the Heaven Domain boundary disappeared, this power would gradually weaken, as the human world's consciousness would gradually fuse into the Heaven Awakened world. Perhaps it was time for him to find a suitable faction to protect him in the Heaven Spirit Steel. Zhao Fu helplessly laughed at himself and put this matter aside for now. The second matter was about the Devil Horn Empire. The Devil Horn Empire had been a dukedom kingdom and had tried to invade the Lontong world and Grassy world. However, the two worlds had stubbornly resisted, and although the Devil Horn Empire had not succeeded, the other worlds sensed how dangerous it was. As such, the other worlds allied together to suppress it. With so many worlds allying together, the Devil Horn Empire was naturally not a match for them, so it switched from attacking to defending. Before, the other worlds had wanted to ally together to destroy the Devil Horn Empire and divide the Devil Horn world. However, this time, the Devil Horn Empire's king had fought against many people at Dragon Bone Mountain, causing the heavens and earth to dim and mountains to collapse. However, in the end, he had not been able to defeat the Devil Horn Empire's king. The Devil Horn Empire's king was simply too terrifying. Following this, the other worlds slowed down their suppression of the Devil Horn Empire. The Devil Horn Empire took this opportunity to change its attitude and expressed that it was willing to reconcile with the other worlds. In exchange, it gave up countless precious treasures and beauties, causing the other worlds to slow down their suppression of the Devil Horn Empire. They understood that the Devil Horn Empire was a very tough nut to crack, and if they wanted to devour it, the price would not be small. As such, they took this opportunity to obtain even more benefits. The current situation was that the Devil Horn world's relationship with the other worlds was becoming better. It would not be long before there would be no more battles, and the Devil Horn Empire would be able to get past this crisis. After this, the Devil Horn Empire would most likely develop in secret and would not act so openly. This was a good lesson, but the Devil Horn Empire's threat did not decrease at all. After all, once things became more secretive, it would be harder to discover them. Zhao Fu felt that if the Devil Horn Empire was not destroyed, it would definitely fight with Qin in the future. Of course, that was if Qin had not been destroyed by a higher being. Going back to his original goal, Zhao Fu took back 10 million talisman stones. Qin still lacked talisman stones, as his army had been expanding quite quickly. However, he had already bought a lot of talisman stones, and if he wanted more, he would have to go to more worlds to buy them. After taking care of matters in the Heaven Awakened world, Zhao Fu returned to the real world. Before, Zhao Fu had brought everyone from the 5 kingdoms into the real world, shocking many people. Even if someone acted against the Ying family, the Ying family could immediately enter the Heaven Awakened world, and they would not be able to threaten the Ying family. Before, many people had wanted to destroy the Ying family to vent their anger. For example, Qin had destroyed many factions, such as the dynasty legatees and nation legatees. Because of the real world, Zhao Fu had not been able to completely destroy them, and they had been waiting for an opportunity to take revenge on Qin. However, now that Qin could bring a large number of people into the real world, they understood that attacking the Ying family would not have much of an effect, so they once again hid themselves. Just like before, the first thing Zhao Fu did after returning to the real world was to fill his stomach. At that moment, Wu Qingyang called him and asked if Zhao Fu had made up his mind. Not long after Zhao Fu had woken up from his heavy injuries, Wu Qingyang had been trying to convince Zhao Fu that Qin's legatee was too dangerous and that she wanted Zhao Fu to stay away from him. She had also prepared to relocate in order to protect the foundation of the Zhou dynasty. Wu Qingyang said that it would be difficult to reverse the trend of China being unified by Qin, but she would take Zhao Fu to another continent or another world and wait for an opportunity to develop. She would never submit to Qin's legatee. Wu Qingyang said that she understood how lascivious legatee Qin was and that he would not let her off just because of her relationship with Zhao Fu. She would definitely be captured by legatee Qin for pleasure, and if Zhao Fu did not want to lose her, he would have to leave Qin and go somewhere else with her. What should Zhao Fu say? To Zhao Fu, Wu Qingyang was one of the few women that he cared about. Perhaps he could consider telling her his identity, and there should not be any problems. However, would she be angry if she found out that he was legatee Qin's legatee? Zhao Fu was thinking about how to reply to Wu Qingyang when a system announcement sounded out in the real world. Chapter 9:30. When this system announcement sounded out, the entire world was shaken. Now, even an idiot knew that the world was going to be destroyed, and the rumors from before were actually true. There was only a month left before the world was destroyed, and the entire world was panicking, not knowing what to do. The world, which had been on the brink of collapse, finally went out of control. Even countries could not control it, and money completely lost its value. If the world was destroyed, what was the point of holding on to paper money? It was just a pile of useless paper. People started to use gold, silver, and jewelry to trade. This was the most common method of trade in this chaotic world, as gold, silver, and jewelry would not depreciate in value at any time. However, no one knew how the real world would be destroyed, and no one knew if they could bring the gold and silver to the heaven-awakened world. If they could not bring it to the heaven-awakened world, it would be useless. Moreover, the heaven-awakened world had its own currency system, and the gold and silver had depreciated in value and could no longer be used as currency. Exchanging for other goods was now an ordinary method of trade. The world, which had been developing so quickly and had a complete technological currency system, had now become a primitive method of trade. The most important thing was that no one went to work, as the world was about to be destroyed. Almost everyone in the world went on strike, and all production stopped. Transportation was completely paralyzed, and the reason for the riots was because of the lack of resources. Now, the military was unable to suppress the people who were looting resources, as there were simply too many cities. As such, the real world had fallen into chaos, and the strong preyed on the weak. It was the survival of the fittest, and there was no moral order to speak of. When people did not have enough to eat, they would do anything, even eating other people. Ordinary families did not have that many resources, and it was almost impossible for them to last for a month. Now that the currency system had collapsed, how could people obtain resources? They could only rob others. The military could only suppress a portion of the rioters and could not suppress all of them. Some people said that humans were able to unite and help each other in the apocalypse, but this was quite childish. After all, when there were plenty of resources, people could reason with you and would not rob others. Once there was a shortage of resources, only the strong could obtain them, and the weak could only die or steal from even weaker people. In actuality, if they had not rioted and followed the way the world had operated, it would not have been so chaotic. However, most people had lost their rationality and only cared about the benefits in front of them. Who would care about anything else? Were those people stupid? It was the same for you in that kind of environment because no one wanted to starve. The real world was about to be destroyed, and the law was no longer effective, so the deterrence it brought was naturally gone. What about a world without law? This kind of riot came from human nature. Usually, it was only because of the deterrence of the law. If there were no legal constraints, and they had to rely on human self-discipline to manage, how could a country be maintained? It was completely impossible. Sometimes, it couldn't be said to be stupid, because it was already the general trend, and no one could stop it. No one wanted to starve, so they had to become a member of the mob. Otherwise, they could only starve. With the collapse of the real world, the number of casualties skyrocketed, and the country concentrated its military forces to protect a small portion of the region to maintain order. This chaos was mainly caused by ordinary people, but the upper echelons of the world were not affected much. This was because the upper echelons of the world had long since known that the real world would be destroyed, so they had long since made preparations. As such, they naturally did not fall into chaos, and they continued to eat luxurious food and drink expensive wine. Zhao Fu was one of these people. Zhao Fu did not care too much about the destruction of the real world, as it would not affect him much. Facing Wu Qingyang's words, Zhao Fu decided to tell her first because his identity would definitely be revealed when the real world was destroyed. If she found out, it would be even worse, so it was better for Zhao Fu to tell her personally. Qingyang, because of the current situation, I'm very sorry that I lied to you about something, Zhao Fu said seriously and apologetically. Wu Qingyang lightly harumphed. I knew you were hiding something from me. Why are you telling me now? What is it? Don't tell me about the other women. I've long since known about this, and I've been looking for an opportunity to teach you a lesson. Zhao Fu awkwardly smiled and replied, It's not about that. Let's meet in the heaven-awakened world, and I'll tell you everything. Wu Qingyang felt quite confused and had never thought that there would be something so important that Zhao Fu would be so serious. After thinking about it, Wu Qingyang agreed. Because the Zhou dynasty was in the southern part of the Midland continent, Zhao Fu decided to meet her there. Wu Qingyang brought 20 or so of her personal guards, all of whom were valiant-looking female soldiers, and waited for Zhao Fu at a secret location. After Zhao Fu returned to the heaven-awakened world, he first told this matter to a noble, graceful, and domineering woman. After all, this matter was related to her, and with her help, things would be much easier to resolve. The beautiful woman was quite angry and lightly hit Zhao Fu a few times, saying, Who would have thought that you wouldn't even spare my legatee? You're so evil. Zhao Fu could only dryly laugh and say a few more words. In the end, the beautiful woman agreed and was willing to go with Zhao Fu to resolve this matter. Your Majesty, may I ask who you're waiting for? It's been more than 2 hours. Why hasn't that person come yet? How disrespectful for someone of your status to wait for so long. One of the female soldiers looked at Her Majesty and felt quite angry. No one had ever made her young madam wait for so long. Wu Qingyang lightly smiled as she replied, He's been delayed by something and will be back soon. Even though he's not a legatee, he's even more prestigious than a legatee. In actuality, in front of him, my status is only SOSO. Make sure to be careful when you speak later. Hearing this, the female soldier felt quite shocked and felt quite confused as she asked, What's Your Majesty's status? He's not a legatee and is on equal footing with you. This subordinate can't think of such a person. Wu Qingyang turned and sweetly smiled as she said, You might not know him, but you might know someone else. That person is the world-shaking legatee Qin, and he's legatee Qin's representative in the real world. He controls all of the Ying family's power and has an extremely high status in Qin. Chapter 9:31. After all, with great Qin's legatees' fame, let alone ordinary legatees, even ordinary dynasties were nothing to him. Moreover, that person was an important official by Great Qin's legatee's side, and he was Great Qin's legatee's representative in the real world. His status was comparable to ordinary legatees, if not even higher. Thinking to there, the female soldier couldn't help but think back to what Wu Qingyang had said. Wu Qingyang had said that after Zhao Fu arrived, she would capture Zhao Fu and feed him a truth pill, causing his body to become real. Hearing this, the female soldier's face became even paler. Thinking about the consequences of this, she couldn't help but remind him, Your Highness, don't worry. Did he really have to do that? That's Prince Qin's man. Wu Qingyang nodded seriously and harumphed with dissatisfaction. If I don't do this, he will never leave with me. I don't know why he's so loyal to Prince Qin. I can give him whatever Prince Qin can give him, but he's not willing to come, so I can only use this method. With how ruthless Imperial Prince Qin was, Zhao Fu would definitely die at his hands sooner or later. After all, Zhao Fu had a king's fate, which would definitely arouse suspicion. If Zhao Fu stayed with Imperial Prince Qin, his fate would definitely be extremely tragic. Also, now that Qin has unified the North after consolidating his foundation, he will make his move in other directions. I think the other forces can't hold on anymore, so we have to be prepared to move at any time. The Wuzhou kingdom is just an ant in front of Prince Qin and can be stomped to death at any time. I had heard that Qin was extremely licentious and lustful. I would never let him play with me like a tool to vent his lust. Life like that would be worse than death. Therefore, I had made all the preparations. After I caught Zhao Fu, I would take him back by force even if he didn't want to. Afterwards, we'll go to the southern continent and hide for a while. Right now, the Midland continent is no longer safe. After the heavenly domain boundary disappears, we'll go to other places to develop. That way, we won't have to worry about Prince Qin. With our strength, although it's not worth mentioning to Qin, it's not a problem for us to protect ourselves. After hearing Wu Qingyang's words, the female soldier felt slightly relieved. She had already made preparations and would not rashly offend Qin. Otherwise, if they dared to kidnap an important minister by Qin's side, they would definitely incur the wrath of Qin. Just as the female soldier was about to say something, her expression suddenly changed as she cried out in terror, "Your Majesty, hurry up and leave." Wu Qingyang immediately sensed those terrifying ripples, and her expression became incredibly unsightly as her heart plummeted. By now, it was too late to run, as two cloaked figures had already appeared above them. The person in the lead gave off a terrifying aura, an aura that caused others to feel despair. This aura was deeply engraved in Wu Qingyang's heart, as this aura belonged to the most terrifying person in the human world, Great Prince Qin. Wu Qingyang and the female soldiers had never thought that instead of Zhao Fu, the incredibly terrifying Great Prince Qin would appear. What was going on? Thinking about Zhao Fu, who had yet to arrive, Wu Qingyang felt quite startled. Something had definitely happened to Zhao Fu, and she felt incredibly hateful. Boom! The female soldiers did not hesitate at all and exploded out with their auras to cover Wu Qingyang's escape. Otherwise, they would all die. However, before they could do anything, that terrifying Great Prince Qin merely stretched out his hand and pressed down, causing a formless energy to lock down all of them. The entire forest fell into a deathly silence, and the atmosphere was incredibly oppressive. Wu Qingyang gritted her teeth and looked at Great Prince Qin's terrifying eyes under his cloak. Just as she was about to say something, he called out first, "Qingyang." Hearing this familiar voice, Wu Qingyang's body became weak, and she almost fell over. She looked at the cloaked figure in disbelief. How could Great Prince Qin speak with Zhao Fu's voice? How was this possible? A shocking guess appeared in Wu Qingyang's mind. This guess was quickly confirmed. Zhao Fu took off his cloak, revealing his incredibly handsome face and long, gray-white hair. He was dressed in black robes with dragon inscriptions on them, and his body gave off a noble, domineering, and terrifying aura. Zhao Fu. Even though the Zhao Fu in the real world was quite different from the Zhao Fu in the Heaven Awakened world, Wu Qingyang could still tell that this person was Zhao Fu, and she could not help but call out in a trembling voice. She had never thought that Zhao Fu was that terrifying Great Prince Qin. Thinking about all of the suspicions from before, Wu Qingyang understood everything, and her expression became dim. Zhao Fu and another person descended from the sky, while Zhao Fu came to Wu Qingyang's side. Seeing Wu Qingyang's expression, the female soldiers understood that they had to retreat to the side. Seeing the dim expression on Wu Qingyang's face, Zhao Fu could not help but say, "I'm sorry, Qingyang. You should know the situation I was in at the beginning. Before Qin was developed, I couldn't even protect my own life, so I could only choose to hide it." Wu Qingyang angrily turned her head to the side. She had never thought that the person she had trusted so much would lie to her this entire time. Moreover, their identities had completely changed. Before, Wu Qingyang had been quite confident in herself, but now that she knew that Great Prince Qin was Zhao Fu, her confidence had completely disappeared. Seeing Wu Qingyang like this, Zhao Fu felt quite uncomfortable and said, "Qingyang, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. What do you want me to do to make you not angry? I don't want to see you like this." Hearing Zhao Fu's words, Wu Qingyang turned and looked at Zhao Fu, who also felt quite uncomfortable. She did not feel as angry anymore, and she understood how Zhao Fu felt towards her. There were not many people who could make that terrifying Great Prince Qin act like this. However, Wu Qingyang still looked quite displeased, but she was no longer angry. She raised her hand and hit Zhao Fu a few times, while Zhao Fu lightly smiled and hugged her. "Your Majesty, do you think it's appropriate for you to toss me aside?" The person Zhao Fu had brought took off his cloak and looked at this scene as he said with a trace of jealousy. Hearing this voice, Wu Qingyang looked quite convinced. She turned and saw that this person was the Wu family's ancestor, Wu Zetian, who had given her the legacy. What's going on? Why would their ancestor, Wu Zetian, appear here? Zhao Fu told Wu Qingyang what had happened, and Wu Qingyang understood. This was the reason why Zhao Fu had brought Wu Zetian here. As the founder of the Zhou dynasty, Wu Zetian would naturally be able to persuade Wu Qingyang. Wu Qingyang struggled out of Zhao Fu's embrace and respectfully bowed to Wu Zetian as she called out, "Ancestor Wu." Wu Zetian lightly smiled as she walked over, saying, "Qingyang, there's no need to be so polite in the future. From now on, there's no need to be so reserved and polite. Just act more normally. For example, you can treat this consort as your older sister." Chapter 9:32. Zhao Fu dryly laughed and brought Wu Qingyang into his embrace. Wu Qingyang's face became red, and she tried to struggle free from Zhao Fu. However, after struggling a bit, she found that she could not break free, so she stopped struggling and lightly wrapped her arms around Zhao Fu's waist. "Qingyang, what do you plan to do with the Zhou dynasty?" Zhao Fu asked as he looked at Wu Qingyang. Because Wu Qingyang had said that she was afraid of Qin and wanted to relocate and hide, Zhao Fu could not bear to do anything to her. Wu Qingyang stretched out her slim hand and pinched Zhao Fu's waist, saying, "My Wu family's ancestor is already yours, so why are you still asking me?" Zhao Fu smiled. Zhao Fu and Wu Zetian had already discussed the Zhou dynasty. The Zhou dynasty could completely fuse with Qin, and all of its people, cities, and resources could be given to Qin. However, there was one thing that they had to agree to, which was the title of Lord. This was quite easy, and Zhao Fu agreed without even thinking about it. After all, Zhao Fu had been given the title of a ruler to any nation legatee, and because of his relationship with Wu Qingyang, Zhao Fu could even give the Wu family the title of a martial lord. Both Wu Zetian and Wu Qingyang were quite satisfied. Following this, they discussed the matter of the Zhou dynasty moving to Qin. The Wu family had not expected this, but there were many people who cheered and celebrated. After all, it was quite difficult to change the trend of Qin's unification. In the end, they would only be destroyed by Qin, so joining Qin was quite a good choice. More importantly, Qin gave the Wu family some special treatment, which made them quite happy. After all, most people who submitted would not be able to enjoy such treatment. The Ying family was also quite surprised. They had never thought that the Wu family would submit to Qin so easily. Yingxi was the most surprised because she understood Wu Qingyang's personality. She had never thought that she would be willing to submit to Qin. With Qin's licentious personality, wasn't he afraid that Qin would act against him? As someone from the Ying family, Yingxi really wanted to see Wu Qingyang end up like that. She had wanted to ask Wu Qingyang about it, but the Wu family's people had all entered the Heaven-Awakened world with their real bodies, so Yingxi could not find anyone to ask. Even though the Heaven-Awakened world was about to be destroyed and the Ying family was about to enter Qin, thinking about how the various family leaders had told her that she had to become Qin's legatee's concubine, Yingxi's expression became quite unsightly. Perhaps only Zhao Fu, who she had looked down on in the past, could help her. After taking care of Wu Qingyang's matters, Zhao Fu once again returned to the real world. Because the real world had completely spiraled out of control, there were some things that he had to take care of. The main thing was to provide protection. Now that the world was about to be destroyed, countless factions wanted to join Qin and receive Qin's protection. There were 10 or so times more people than before, and as long as they could join Qin, they were willing to do anything. Some people were even willing to kneel to express their loyalty to Qin. Zhao Fu did not pay much attention to these opportunists. Right now, Zhao Fu's main job was to provide protection to other people. These people were some of Zhao Fu's grandmother's relatives and friends' families. Zhao Fu did not have any dealings with them, but helping them out of friendship was not a big deal. After all, it was only a small matter. Even though the outside world was quite chaotic, the Ying family was still quite safe. There were no problems with food, electricity, or the internet. With the Ying family's protection, they would definitely be quite safe, and there was nothing to worry about. Everyone was naturally incredibly grateful towards Zhao Fu for being able to receive the Ying family's protection. Seeing these relatives, Zhao Fu's grandparents were so happy that they wanted to entertain them, so they quickly prepared a banquet. However, Zhao Fu did not participate, as he was not interested at all. Just as Zhao Fu was about to leave his grandpa and grandma's house, his uncle and auntie came to find him and said apologetically, "Heir Zhao Fu, you must have a lot of power and great sheen, right?" Zhao Fu coldly looked at them and lightly nodded as he asked, "What is it?" Zhao Fu did not want to have anything to do with his uncle and aunt, and he even felt quite disgusted with them. If it wasn't for his grandparents, Zhao Fu would have immediately chased them out of the Ying family and left them to fend for themselves. Because of their snobbish behavior, they had wiped away the trace of familial love that Zhao Fu had for them. So Zhao Fu naturally did not have any good impressions of them. Hearing Zhao Fu's reply, his aunt happily said, "Lil Fu, it's like this. Before, we didn't know that the situation would be so serious. If we had known, we would have asked you to help find a good job for your cousin and younger cousin in Qin. Now that your cousin's village has been conquered by others, your cousin's girlfriend wants your cousin to become a city lord before marrying him. There's nothing we can do about this. So we want you to help your cousin get a city lord. Please help us this time, and I'll make them thank you properly." Hearing this, Zhao Fu lightly laughed. He had been angered to the point of asking for city lord. Their appetite was quite big. Seeing Zhao Fu laugh, his aunt felt quite excited and thought that Zhao Fu had agreed. She could not help but say, "Thank you so much this time." Before she could finish, Zhao Fu cut her off and said, "I don't agree. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving." Hearing Zhao Fu's refusal and how impatient he looked, his uncle said angrily, "Zhao Fu, isn't it just a favor? How can you say such things? They're your cousins, so it's only right for you to help them." Zhao Fu did not even bother replying and turned to leave. Seeing this, his uncle angrily grabbed at Zhao Fu, wanting to teach Zhao Fu a lesson. However, Zhao Fu did not move at all, and a formless energy sent his uncle flying. Now that Zhao Fu had the 6 desires celestial arts cultivation power, he could bring that power back to the real world. Although it was quite weak, it was enough to deal with ordinary people. Zhao Fu's cousin, who had been eavesdropping, angrily rushed out and punched at Zhao Fu. However, by then, the bodyguards had arrived and pressed them to the ground. Zhao Fu's cousin angrily yelled, "Zhao Fu, don't think that you're so great. You only have what you have today because of Prince Qin. If it wasn't for Prince Qin, you wouldn't even be a dog. You're just a goddamn lucky bastard to have caught Prince Qin's eye. If I was lucky, I'd be the one begging me." Zhao Fu waved his hand in annoyance and said, "Chase them out of the Ying family and don't allow them to take a single step in." Hearing this, the world seemed like it was going to be destroyed. If they were chased out, their fates would be unimaginable. Chapter 9:33. After taking care of matters in the real world, Zhao Fu once again returned to the heaven-awakened world. Qin was still clearing out regions and constructing the Great Wall. However, the construction of the Great Wall was quite slow, as there would be disturbances from time to time. They knew that after Qin finished constructing the Great Wall, he would make a move against them, so they had to stop him. As such, Zhao Fu had to send a large number of soldiers to defend the borders in order to allow the residents to construct the Great Wall. Otherwise, with their constant harassment, Qin would not be able to complete the Great Wall at all. 7 days later, the spirit light world's calm sky started to change. Winds blew and clouds gathered as the light gradually dimmed. The atmosphere became quite oppressive, making everyone feel quite uncomfortable. All of the spirit light people felt a terrifying sense of danger descend. All of the world's spirit chi gathered towards a certain place, and that place was like a black hole that devoured all of the spirit chi. The sense of danger became stronger and stronger. By now, the sky had completely darkened, and there was not a trace of light to be seen. This feeling became even more oppressive, as if there was a massive boulder weighing down on their chests. At that moment, all of the spirit light people stopped what they were doing and looked in that direction. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded out as a massive pillar of white light, giving off a terrifying aura, ferociously rushed into the sky, seeming to want to pierce through the sky. The entire world seemed to be grabbed by a massive, formless hand, and all of the spirit chi madly gathered. The spirit chi around the gigantic pillar of light began to condense into a dense fog, and then it began to liquefy before condensing into crystals that floated in the air. Countless crystals floated in the air. This scene was extremely spectacular, and it caused people to be extremely shocked. At that moment, a golden ring of light appeared within the massive pillar of white light. The ring of light was only 2 meters wide at first, but suddenly expanded to 10,000 meters wide. The pillar of white light's power was absorbed by the ring of light, and the floating crystals turned into dust and fused into the golden ring of light. Boom! An incredibly terrifying aura spread out like a tsunami, and all creatures in the world were inundated by this terrifying aura. Everyone felt as if they had fallen into a demon abyss, and their faces were filled with terror as their bodies uncontrollably trembled. Within the 10,000-meter wide golden ring of light, a massive figure slowly descended. First, it was a pair of legs, then a waist, then shoulders, and then the rest of its body. Only then did everyone realize what it was. It was a 10,000-meter tall spirit light person. He was a male and had a tall and muscular body. His skin gave off a precious light, and he looked quite dignified and cold. He was half naked, and there were 9 golden rings of light in front of his chest. This massive spirit light person looked like a living person, but he was actually just a statue and did not have any life at all. There was a very ancient legend in the spirit light world. Before, the spirit light world had been completely desolate without any life, and it was deathly silent to the point that people felt terror. One day, the spirit light primogenitor came here and used his majestic power to change this place. He was the one who created life, the spirit light god race, and everything. After a long time, the primogenitor had into the clan into world 2 of the spirit and of the spirit. World of God of the great of the world again, and the spirit and of the spirit. This statue was the spirit light primogenitor's statue. After he descended, almost all of the spirit light people's bloodlines surged, and they could not help but feel excited. They all knelt towards the statue. They first respectfully knelt 3 times before running towards the primogenitor's statue. Whoever obtained the primogenitor's statue would obtain the entire spirit light world, and almost everyone swarmed over, wanting to snatch the primogenitor's statue. Countless people rushed towards the statue like ants. There were not just ordinary people, but also legatees and dynasty legatees. A massive battle was about to erupt. Boom! The primogenitor's statue automatically gave off a ferocious aura, and the countless ant-like people were easily sent flying. It was unknown just how many of them died. This terrifying aura caused the various legatees to stop and look at the primogenitor's statue seriously. This included the spirit light world's world protector. He was an incredibly handsome young man with silver white hair. After the primogenitor's statue gave off that terrifying aura, a golden energy barrier appeared. It was 10,000 meters tall and tens of thousands of kilometers wide, and it completely covered the primogenitor's statue. One of the world legatees, the big man, immediately rushed towards the golden energy barrier. What surprised everyone was that the golden energy barrier did not stop the big man at all, and he directly entered the golden energy barrier. The others immediately understood and turned into rays of light that flew into the light barrier. The light barrier didn't obstruct them at all, but when some of the weaker people tried to try their luck and enter, they found that the light barrier was indestructible. They couldn't enter at all. Even though the big man was the first to enter the golden energy barrier, more people arrived. Everyone rushed towards the primogenitor statue, and just as they were about to reach it, a person giving off a powerful aura blocked in front of them. He was the spirit light world's world protector, Cayman. Looking at these people rushing over, Cayman coldly harumphed, As the spirit light world's world protector, this primogenitor's statue should belong to me. These words caused everyone to feel quite displeased. The primogenitor's statue was such a precious item, so how could they just give it to someone else? Even though they were from the same race, so what? In front of benefits, people from the same race were worth nothing. Cayman, don't think that we're afraid of you. Everyone, let's work together and defeat Cayman. It'll belong to whoever takes the primogenitor's statue. The big man who had rushed in angrily yelled as he attacked Cayman. The others naturally understood that Cayman was their greatest obstacle, and he was the biggest competitor for the primogenitor's statue. As such, they did not hesitate and unleashed powerful attacks towards Cayman. Facing these people, Cayman coldly laughed and grabbed at the air, causing a silver spear to appear in his hand. He gave off massive power as he rushed towards them, and a massive battle unfolded. Even though the battle on this side was incredibly intense, there were still some people who had not acted yet. They were quite quick-witted, and seeing how intense the battle was, they wanted to fish in troubled waters. However, how could the others allow others to obtain the primogenitor's statue? The aura that the primogenitor statue gave off was incredibly powerful and could shake an entire world. The terrifying ripples were detected by the surrounding worlds. For example, the dark demon world sensed these terrifying ripples and sensed that a shocking treasure had appeared in the spirit light world. Chapter 9:34. Moreover, the spirit light world had invaded the dark demon world and killed so many people. They had not taken revenge yet, and this was a good opportunity. However, this was going into another world, and it was extremely dangerous. It was possible that they would die inside, and they might even be attacked by the entire world. This made many people hesitate and wonder if they had the ability to do so. The battle in the spirit light world was abnormally intense. As the world protector, Cayman fought against dozens of people by himself and was not at a disadvantage at all. His power was incredibly terrifying. The battle had already gone on for 5 or 6 hours, and even though Cayman was not any weaker than them, he was unable to defeat them for a while. As time dragged on, the golden energy barrier gradually weakened. The energy barrier's power was weakening, and there were many people outside the golden energy barrier who were unwilling to give up. They madly attacked the energy barrier, wanting to enter and take the primogenitor statue. I can't let this go on. I have to quickly take the primogenitor statue. Cayman thought to himself as he exploded out with a powerful aura. He pointed his silver spear towards the sky and shouted, 10 holy light dragons. Silver magic formations suddenly appeared in the sky. There were 10 of them in total, and they all gave off intense silver light and powerful auras. Following this, dragons' roars sounded out as western dragons made of light shot out and ferociously charged at the group. These 10 light dragons were extremely big, and they were 1,000 meters long. They gave off immense power as they charged over, and the others did not dare to be careless. They also unleashed powerful attacks to defend against the light dragons. However, by then, Cayman had already reached the primogenitor statue's chest, which was in front of the 9 golden circles. Cayman pressed his hand against the center of the golden circles, causing the golden energy barrier to automatically disappear, and the primogenitor statue's body started to shrink. Seeing this scene, countless people's expressions fell. The primogenitor statue was about to be obtained by Cayman, and with the primogenitor statue's power, the spirit light world would belong to Cayman alone. If that happened, they would all be doomed. 9 got break. One person disregarded everything and used his nation armament's power, exploding out with an incredibly terrifying attack. 9 blinding orbs of light exploded out, killing a light dragon in front of him and causing it to turn into motes of light and dissipate. That person rushed at Cayman. By now, the primogenitor statue had shrunk to less than 30 centimeters, and Cayman felt quite delighted. However, looking at the person rushing at him, he felt quite displeased and exploded out with even more power. He swept out with his spear, bringing with it a gale that sent that person flying. The primogenitor statue had already shrunk to the size of a palm. Cayman wanted to take the primogenitor statue and temporarily leave this place because there were simply too many people fighting over it. However, at that moment, another person slashed out with an incredibly sharp saber light. Cayman gripped his spear with one hand and stabbed out, causing the air to explode as a formless but dangerous piercing power shot towards that person. Suddenly, Cayman sensed something. A look of shock appeared on his face. Just as he was about to do something, he was a step too late, and the primogenitor statue in his hand was snatched away. Ark! Cayman roared as he swept out with his spear, sending out a massive wave of power. A silver crescent flew out, seeming to want to slash the person fighting over the primogenitor statue in half. However, the person fighting over the primogenitor statue was not weak at all. A powerful aura exploded out as he slashed out a sword light, colliding with the silver crescent. An intense explosion sounded out as the sword light blasted out. Because the person fighting over the primogenitor statue had to deal with Cayman's attack, he stopped flying. He was a cold-looking young man, giving off a large amount of demonic chi. The aura he gave off was not any weaker than Cayman's, and he was also a world protector. Chi, don't seek death. Put down my race's primogenitor statue, or I'll kill you. Cayman furiously yelled at that person after losing what he had obtained. This person was the Dark Demon World's world protector, Chi. Facing Cayman's threat, Chi coldly harumphed and did not reply. He turned into a ray of demonic light and shot over the horizon. This was because he had not fully recovered from the injuries he had received from Zhao Fu. Cayman was not any weaker than him, and they had fought to a draw last time. As such, if he stayed, he would most likely lose. Chi turned into a ray of demonic light and escaped, but Cayman could not give up. He also turned into a ray of light and chased after Chi. All of the spirit light people's expressions fell. They had never thought that the primogenitor statue would be taken by someone else today, and the legatees also flew over. Holy ring light. Cayman chased after Chi, and seeing that the distance between him and Chi was becoming greater and greater, he unleashed one of his most powerful attacks, throwing out the silver spear in his hand. The silver spear turned into a silver ray of light that had countless divine runes revolving around it. It gave off an unimaginable punishing power, and as it tore through the sky, it was incredibly fast. Chi was given a big fright. The silver ray of light had already locked onto him, and no matter how he tried to dodge, it would be useless. As such, he could only take it head-on. Chi turned and stretched out a hand, causing boundless demonic chi to flow out as 8 massive demons blocked in front of him. The silver ray of light flashed past like a hot knife through butter, piercing through the demons' chests and causing them to dissipate into demonic chi. Just as the silver ray of light was about to reach Chi unleashed a barrier with demonic runes to protect himself. Because the silver ray of light had been weakened many times, it was not as powerful as before, so the barrier was able to block it. However, Cayman once again held a spear and arrived beside Chi. The spear gave off an explosive power as it stabbed towards Chi's chest. Chi dodged to the side, avoiding this terrifying attack. By now, the other legatees had arrived and surrounded Chi. A big man coldly harumphed. Chi, you're seeking death. You actually dare to steal our primogenitor statue. Do you think our god race is weak? A long-haired woman said, Chi, as long as you hand over the primogenitor statue, we can promise to let you go. You're still injured, right? Don't bring this upon yourself. Cayman stared at Chi. The primogenitor statue was the most important right now. Because he had fought with Chi before, Cayman knew Chi's strength. Even though Chi was injured, he was not completely confident in being able to keep him here, so he nodded and said, As long as you hand over the primogenitor statue, we'll let him go. Mo-Chi was expressionless. The primogenitor statue was incredibly important to the god race, and Mo-Chi's goal was to steal it. How could he give up? Suddenly. Chapter 935. This happened in an instant, and no one had any time to react. Cayman stabbed out with his spear, and his powerful inner strength tore apart the ball of demonic chi. However, the ball of demonic chi immediately dissipated, and it was evident that Cayman's attack had missed. However, Cayman did not give up, and his eyes flashed with golden light as he chased after the ball of demonic chi. Following this, Cayman once again swept out with his spear, bringing with it a powerful gale and forcing Mo-Chi to appear. Cayman glared at Mo-Chi and said angrily, "Mo-Chi, you won't be able to escape." Mo-Chi held the primogenitor statue in his hand, and because it gave off an intense light, he was unable to put it into his spatial ring. For some reason, it was because of this that Mo-Chi's location had been exposed. If he stayed, he would definitely lose. The primogenitor statue was incredibly important to the spirit light race, and Mo-Chi could sense how terrifying it was. He definitely could not allow it to fall into the hands of the spirit light race, or else the dark demon race would suffer a terrible fate. Mo-Chi did not think too much, and once again turned into a ray of light and tried to escape. Cayman had long since seen through Mo-Chi's intentions, and he suddenly attacked with his full strength, throwing out an orb of light. The orb of light soundlessly exploded, and white light spread out in the surrounding 1,000 kilometers, making it difficult for people to open their eyes. This white light was called the world-cleansing light, and it contained incredibly powerful holy light energy that could purify worlds. It was a rare treasure that could deal terrifying damage to all evil creatures, and in order to keep Mo-Chi here, Cayman was willing to do anything. After the white light dissipated, Mo-Chi coughed up a mouthful of blood. He had been quite heavily injured, but he looked at Cayman with killing intent in his eyes. He was truly enraged, and a demonic flame ignited around his body. Mo-Chi wanted to stay behind and fight with Cayman. However, because he had been so focused on Cayman, Mo-Chi had been slightly careless, and a white object suddenly shot out from the side, sweeping away the primogenitor statue in Mo-Chi's hand. Immediately, Mo-Chi was infuriated and sent terrifying demonic chi into the demonic sword in his hand, causing it to give off boundless sword chi that seemed to cause space to explode. The space around him became dark, and many cracks appeared. A strange laugh sounded out as a figure appeared beside him. It was a person completely wrapped in bandages, revealing only a pair of dark green eyes. It seemed to be a woman, as she had a graceful figure and a pair of large breasts. This woman gave off powerful corpse chi and was not any weaker than Mo-Chi or Cayman's. She was also a world protector and came from a world to the left of the spirit light world, while the world to the right of the spirit light world was the dark demon world. Primogenitor statue? I never thought that your spirit light race would have such a treasure. I'll help you take care of it. Do you have any objections? The woman gave out a weird laugh. She looked at the primogenitor statue in her hands, and then at Mo-Chi and Carmen. Corpse puppet, don't go too far. Hand over the primogenitor statue. We have an agreement with the corpse Paul world. Could it be that you want to go to war with the god race? We have the door of gods. We can start a world war at any time. Cayman obviously knew this woman and said angrily, "Oof." Corpse puppet coldly harumphed before saying, "Letting your spirit light race obtain the primogenitor statue would be a disaster. All right, I don't want to say anything else. I'm leaving." After speaking, the corpse puppet prepared to turn into a ray of light. However, the furious Mo-Chi directly acted. He stretched out a hand, and countless traces of demonic chi flowed out, forming a massive demonic hand that grabbed towards the corpse puppet. Since this person dared to steal something from him, Mo-Chi naturally would not let him off. Cayman did not hesitate and vigorously stabbed out with his spear, causing a spear light to ferociously stab towards Corpse Puppet, looking as if he was going to kill her. Facing the two people's attacks, Corpse Puppet strangely laughed and did not move. Mochi's demonic hand arrived and grabbed onto Corpse Puppet's body. However, Corpse Puppet's body turned into countless traces of black matter and disappeared. As Corpse Puppet disappeared, Cayman's attack naturally missed. Suddenly, a light lit up. It was the light from the primogenitor statue. Corpse Puppet was given a big fright and understood that she had been exposed, so she quickly revealed herself and turned into a ray of light as she shot away. Mochi and Cayman immediately chased after her because there were two of them. Even though they were not working together, they had a common target, which was to stop Corpse Puppet. Demon Wave. Mochi did not waste any words as a gash appeared on his sword-wielding hand, and black blood flowed out and entered his sword. Mochi vigorously slashed out, opening up a hole, and tens of thousands of demons roared as they rushed at Corpse Puppet. Corpse Puppet's expression became serious, and she slashed out with her sword, causing the countless bandages on her body to shoot out like arrows, piercing through the demons' bodies and turning them into traces of demonic chi. Cayman also attacked Corpse Puppet and once again summoned the 10 holy light dragons. The 10 massive light dragons gave off intense holy light energy as they roared and rushed at her, giving off shocking auras. The light dragons seemed to want to tear Corpse Puppet apart. Shi Zhao's gaze became cold, and she grabbed out with her hand. The bandages on her body gathered around her arm, forming a sword made of bandages. Shi Zhao was extremely agile, and she weaved back and forth between the light dragons. She swung the sword in her hand, sending out gray crescent sword lights that killed the light dragons one by one. However, Mochi had already closed in and vigorously slashed out, and the terrifying demonic light instantly devoured Corpse Puppet's body. Pooh! Corpse Puppet coughed up a mouthful of blood and flew back. Facing the attacks of 2 world protectors by herself was not so simple. Cayman took this opportunity to attack Shi Zhao, stabbing out with his spear and sending a searing white beam of light towards Shi Zhao. Shi Zhao quickly dodged to the side, and seeing that Mochi was about to attack again, her expression became quite unsightly. She did not have the strength to defend against the 2 world protectors' attacks, and she could not escape either. If she stayed, she would only lose. Wait, I don't want this primogenitor statue anymore. Corpse Puppet thought about it, and suddenly called out, throwing the primogenitor statue at Mochi. Cayman immediately turned to Mochi, and just as Mochi was about to catch the primogenitor statue, Corpse Puppet suddenly acted. A few bandages shot out and wrapped around the primogenitor statue. At that moment, a rune appeared on Corpse Puppet's forehead. She had been trying to divert Cayman and Mochi's attention so that she could use her life-saving technique to escape. This primogenitor statue was incredibly powerful, and she did not want to let it go. It was definitely a rare treasure. Corpse Puppet's bandages easily wrapped around the primogenitor statue, but just as Corpse Puppet was about to pull it back, a few rays of black sword light cut through the bandages. A person giving off an incredibly terrifying aura that seemed to cause space to freeze stepped out and grabbed the primogenitor statue. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.